Does he have it?
Medeiros is going to get it.
They're going to toss it. They haven't got it.
He's on the outside line though, going into the fastest corner on the circuit. Surely this can't work.
Dominic Ligner has got a sensational run outside line now though for the heavy braking zone. Around the outside goes the Audi R8.
Look how much Miller's caught back into play. Exactly, Miller's still start trouble. He's not on second and change. All of a sudden, Miller's back in play.
Can Barry do it? Big Barry's going to do it. Big Barry!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to CMS Racing here for the Virtual World Sportscar Championship. It's the 27th of April, 2024, and we've decided to take a trip up north to Belgium to let the GT3 Haven show its way around. Of course, my name is Bradley Dalton. I'm going to be joined in the booth by Becky Ely today, a driver that, of course, won Targa Floria in the Historics, has ran a couple of races here in the Modern, and has decided to jump in the broadcast booth with me today to give Mr. James Parfit, of course, the wonderful James Parfit, a little bit of a break in the background to let him sort of focus on different things. This is going to be a big, big run, and this is, of course, round number 5 here. 90 minutes of Spa. The big race that I'm excited about coming up in June is the 4.8 hours of Le Mans. That is a race that I'm very, very thrilled about. And then, of course, going from there, round 7 at the end of June, it's 60 minutes to Glen, and then from there we go to Sao Paulo, and then 90 minutes at Coda, which is a track that I greatly love, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that goes. We got Fuji in there, Indy, Atlanta, and then, of course, we'll round out the season round 13 at Bahrain. So, and then, of course, today it's Circuit Spa-Francorchamps. And not a lot you need to say about it. Big thing is to watch the orange zones. So the orange zone is where you've got to be on your P's and Q's and really have it together. That's all the way through Speaker's Corner, turn number 9. The 7-kilometer track built in 1921 originally. Of course, we watched the Historics run the historic Spa-Francorchamps, the big long run, and now we get to go for the modern one for the Hypercars and the GT3s. This is one that I think you're going to enjoy. Keys to the race here. Multi-class closing speed. How do those Hypercars deal with those GT3s? Weather. It's Belgium. If you've been a fan of Spa of any amount, you know what this weather's going to do. And of course, you need to nail La Sauce, and you need to nail Eau Rouge as humanly much as possible. Ideally, the whole 90 minutes, but I'm sure we're going to see something happen going up the wheel. Strategy for the GT in the strategy corner. They've got mediums, they've got wets. We're expecting 30 to 35 minute stints, 2 stops. The cars are mostly equal from what we've seen. This is a GT Haven, as I said, so we're not really expecting anything too crazy to happen here. Now, the hypercar corner, that's where the conversation is. It's medium tires, it's wet tires. 20 to 22 minutes on a fuel stint with 3 to 4 stops expected. Now, if it's dry, it's the ARX-06 that we're really going to see shine the Acura. But if it rains, the all-wheel drive cars are really going to be what stand out. Particularly the Soda is what we think is going to stand out, and that is what we're looking at. Let's look at the standings real quick. This is going to be LMGT3 standings, the AMs. It's Matthew Bice, Stephen Miller, and Mike Puis, and then Josh Lippertree, Stephen Bice, James Bowders, Matt Bice, Roland Hagernas, Filippo Marazzi, Ryan Reyes, Carl Strohal, and Jaleh Hajin down in the 12 cars. And then, of course, it's Trash Panda Corvette C8 GT3 Racing with the Bice family, and then Speed Details MREs there in second place. Now, the LMGT3 standings, this is where the big ones are. You got JT Tammy, David Junt, Alicio Neto, Matthew Overton, Joe Wilkes, Brendan Gant, Kyle Vessa, James Walker, Johnny Gutierrez, Robert Strachan, Ross Smith, Wayne Galvin, Adrian Rice, Jamie Zalecki, Giles Lalonde, Eugene Mazur, Stuart Barge, Becky Ely there in P18, Vasos Kakernakis, Yuki Takanashi, Max Sunlap, Peter Meyer, Dave Kors, Sene Stefamil, Sakin Sabers, Ollie K, and Barry DeMar there in 27 drivers. Hypercar AM, Jerry Chin, George Angelides, John Meyer, Scar Pope, Craig Pullen, Norm Graff, Philippe Decardi, Grumer Beck, and Benjamin Porteous Heath, and Eric Monet, Luke Goodlife, Yaroslav Zakic, Vinicius Gonzalez, Peter Stefani, Adam Gray, Tom Mountjoy, Maximilian Petrovsky, and Jason Whitehead with the Mistral Porsche 963 team in the lead there in the Hypercar AMs. Now looking at the Hypercars themselves, the big standings. Daniel Kirby, Daniel Murlock, Mike Bell, Michel Dinu, John Uyen, Tom Lane, Cameron Barker, Ernesto Bernaldo, Wooder De Bruin, and Ben Kesby, with Timon Suvic, Alexander Schultz, Brian Hall, Jassa Schmidt, Michael Locke, Bradley Sellers, Aliko Businik, Adrian Rice, Tony McCoffin, Magnus Dahlgren, Luke Mitchell, Oliver Newman, William Snowden, Austin Bergfield, Donald Hunter, Don Hunter, Alexander Samaria, Riley Wyans, and Jeffrey Ellis, the 29 drivers in the Hypercars. It's a lot of driver names and a lot of people to look through. And of course, it's the CMS Pro team at the top of the Hypercars right now. So with that being said, that's all of the fun housekeeping that goes through. Let's talk to Ross Smith for just a minute here. And Ross, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good afternoon to you. How's it going?
Yeah, it's not too bad. How are things for you? Are you enjoying the rain in the Belgium hills?
Rain never bothered me anyway, but it's difficult with this car just in general because the Ferrari 296 is it struggles at this track in particular because there are a lot of different corners, and it doesn't seem to like the high speed corners. It really likes to plow the way that we have to set it up in order to keep it tracking properly throughout the race. But yeah, I mean, it should be a good race. There are a lot of drivers here, so a lot for you guys to talk about.
Yeah, definitely going to be plenty to talk about with not enough time for 90 minutes. Ross, tell me, what changes have you all made in the background?
Coming in here, I don't believe there's anything that's gone on yet, although there are some discussions around BOP for the Tipo 6, so we'll see how that goes as we head into Le Mans. That's could be controversial just because that format changes a little bit for that particular track. But as far as most of the rest of the cars, I don't know that there's too much being looked at right now, just at least as far as across both grids, I guess you could say. So not much there, although there is a lot of graphical updating still happening in the background. Still for me, since I'm focusing on that at Storm Gang, I'm still trying to get some of the next year's cars in order, so that way our testing teams can do all the things they need to do. And then I'm going to switch gears back in and hopefully get the NSX, the Lamborghini GT3, some of those cars all up to snuff, and you should see those changes making their way in over time.
Now, I have to ask you, Ross, because you said on the strategy card that the GT3s were very balanced at this track. But you just also said that the Ferrari isn't the strongest at this track.
Yeah, it's an outlier.
Are there any GT3s that are going to be a little bit better than others? Now, granted, I'm sure most of them will be fairly even, but any of them that you think we should keep a little bit more of an eye on?
I think the Astons are definitely going to be pretty strong here, as are the Corvettes, just because they can. I mean, they'll be strong through sector 2-3 section. It's going to be those long straights where they'll struggle a little bit to really keep pace with some of the other cars, because you just have to nail the corners and use its strength there to be able to pull through and make your pace. So the Astons, I mean, they're very strong overall, and especially here. I mean, you'll see JT swarm his way back up from the back. Same thing with Matthew Overton. Not sure why they missed qualifying, but there they are. And I'm actually a little bit surprised with the Mustangs for them doing as well as they are, because usually their biggest weakness is kind of the higher speed corners, of which we have a few here, but they seem to be eating them up pretty good. So maybe just that goobly gauche, that maybe they're a little bit slower, but doing well everywhere else.
Definitely, it's going to be interesting to see how things land. Now, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions here. MLO last week seemed like there was a lot of different issues with traffic. Has there been any conversations about that, or is that something that you've kind of just told everyone, like, figure it out, it's traffic?
So Imola, I feel like, I mean, there were a couple points of sketchiness for sure, but in general, just because of the way that track is, it wasn't too bad. There are a couple drivers that got it wrong, and just because the sheer number of cars on track, it made some issues look a lot worse than they were. But in terms of the way that traffic management was, like for instance, when I was driving through, I saw very few instances that I thought were even borderline. So I mean, that one was generally okay. I think Spa is actually going to be a lot more dangerous because you have much higher closing rates of speed. And we've traditionally had a lot of issues here in the past, particularly when you see places like up by Blanchimont, where you've got a high rate of speed where hypercars are going to be coming up through, and GT3s are going to be on the limit. It's going to be the same thing at Eau Rouge and Radion. That there isn't just quite enough length of track from La Source going down the hill where the hypercars can get up alongside and pass the GT3s. So it's kind of like you get to that point and then it's a last second call on whether you're going to see a hypercar try and go for it, or if they're going to back out and let the GT3 on its way through up the hill, because GT3s are going to push out every single time, and they just got to be on the lookout for it.
And what are we thinking race results for you today? Where are we gonna see Ross at the end of this race?
Hopefully just surviving. That's the goal for today. We'll see if we can take advantage of others having issues. I mean, we've got a decent amount of rain going on right now, which is helpful. And I just know that it seems like other drivers, for whatever reason, they seem to struggle a little bit more than we do for some of the wet. But yeah, just surviving as much as possible and keeping the car underneath, and we'll see how things play out.
I think you'll do fine. We'll see how things go. Just keep it together on the hill, and I think you'll be okay. Keep it together through Eau Rouge, and I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, Eau Rouge is going to be a beast for sure. It's challenging for everyone.
Yeah, it's that's the hill that I'm going to be watching personally, just to see what happens. But Ross, I'll let you go and get to it. Good luck, sir, and hopefully we'll be talking to you after.
Well, it's a far cry for that one. I don't think we'll have near as many DNFs as we saw at the historic Spa, but that would be quite the treat. I wish you guys the best. We're sad to see Becky out for this one. It's always a pleasure to have her on track, but she's turning her talents in for the broadcast, so we definitely appreciate that. And a quick shout out to Mike Bell and his family, as his mom just got it done with a major operation, and she's recovering from that. So keeping them in our thoughts as they go through that. And thanks for everyone else for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. And we'll let you get to it, and we'll talk to you later, okay?
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Becky, are you still here with me? I know...
I am still here with you. I just thought I would wait. After last time I was in the booth, I got a bit excited and I spoke a bit much, and I just thought I'll be a bit calmer, a bit more chill this time.
James, I see that your time with James was not pleasant. I'll make sure your experience in the booth is a little more fun here in Belgium.
My time with James was fantastic. He couldn't have been better. It was my performance rather than his.
Nah, I'm sure it's not a problem. But what are you doing? It's interesting to see you not racing, as Ross said. But glad to have you in the booth. Give me your rundown of Spa. We've had the strategy card. We've talked to Ross for a minute. Give me the Becky Ely rundown. What are you looking at? What are you expecting? What, as a driver, is this track for you?
This track has a bit of everything. It's a great track. High speed, lots of fast corners. I'm in a Ferrari as well as Ross, so it's a pretty dire track. Like every other track, even Imola, even though I didn't do it, I made a setup for my team that I run with, and after a stint I had pace to be on the podium at that track. At Spa, I think I'd be lucky to be fighting for the podium in the Ferrari. It's a tough one on that, but I'd be really excited with the rain. Oh, he's going to mix things up, it's going to be great. But all the rain's going to do here is bring the Isotters back to the front, like we saw at Imola, where it was 6 Isotters in the top 8 or whatever for quite a bit of the running. It's going to bring them right back. We've got Oliver Newman on pole, his first ever pole in the Alpine. The Alpine's a car that should be flying around here, but in the wet it's just going to lose out. So I really hope that it dries up quickly.
Yeah, Spa is a track that I feel traditionally, if it does rain, it makes it interesting, but then Spa has 2 characteristics. It's got the wet Spa and the dry Spa, but every track does that, I hear you saying. But Spa does it so much different. It is so much more spread out and different when it's wet versus when it's dry, which is why we see all of these, changes through. I think in general, a little bit of rain isn't going to be bad, because I know you and me and James talked about it pre-broadcast. If it's just a little bit of rain, it will you can handle it still on dry tires, and I don't think it's going to change the characteristic of the track that much. The issue will become, how wet does it actually get?
That's exactly the issue they have right now, where they've been sitting doing their pit watch check. Even though it's only light rain, the rain is really settling on the track, and you can see the spray shooting off. But with this light rain and 47 cars on track, it's not going to be long before we're going to see a racing line appear again, and then dries might be the way to go. We're seeing, even on their warm-up, probably about a third of the grid is actually going out on dry tyres, probably hoping that a dry line's going to appear, or maybe having a quick test whether they can handle it, because a dry line will appear very quickly, or a dry-ish line will appear very quickly in this rain.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to watch. And of course, welcome to everybody that's in YouTube chat there. Becky's not racing. That is correct. Becky is not racing. Becky has decided to spend some time with me in the booth and give James a break, because otherwise it would be James in the booth with me. And James loves me, but me and James tend to spend most of our weekends together on JP Broadcasting anyways. And I think his wife was a little jealous. Literally every Sunday, sun up to sundown. So I think his wife got a little jealous. So he decided he's going to step in the background and take Paul's place in the ear. So that way I get to just hear him in my thoughts instead of you all having to hear his voice. Becky, what car would you pick for this track?
In Hypercar, I pick the Alpine. And in GT, I would pick the Aston. It'd be a toss-up between Aston and Corvette, because the Corvette loves the long corners, but I think I'd go with the Aston. I think it's better all round.
Interesting, because I don't know. I think I would really pick the Mustang. I know Ross has said the Mustang's doing pretty good. I'm of course a big Porsche fan, so the 992 is of interest to me, and then the 963 I think would be in Hypercar what I would pick. But again, I'm a Porsche fan, or the Cadillac. But the Cadillac's interesting as a hypercar, but it's one that I tend to personally just enjoy, but it can be a bit of a handful every once in a while. But it seems to be kind of the picturesque hypercar that everyone thinks of, at least here around me. Whenever I mention hypercar, everybody goes, "Oh, that yellow car, the yellow Cadillac," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's the car we're thinking of." So it's interesting to see the variance and how much does setup play for these guys as well, and the drivers. Is setup, getting that setup spot on going to be a big deal for Spa, or if it's maybe a little off, can you just kind of drive your way through it?
I think that really depends on the car and the driver. I think we see things like the Isotta. If that setup is a little bit off in the dry, we're going to see people a second, 2 seconds off the pace. But if you have the Acura, the Alpine, the Porsche a little bit off on setup, it won't be such a big deal. And that's the same in the GT3s. If you've got the the Aston Martin, if there was a Mercedes in there, the Corvette, if that's a little off on setup, that's okay. But the Mustang, if that's a little off on setup, the Ferrari as well, if that's a little off on setup, you're gonna really suffer. We could see Mustangs who Ross was surprised qualified quite well. I'm not surprised they qualified quite well. I actually think it's the fastest car over a single lap, the Mustang. But what it does do is it will do exactly anything you ask it to, which means if you ask it to eat its tyres and take too much out, it's gonna do what you want, but it's gonna take the tyres away. So we could see Mustangs dropping off quite a bit later in their stints. And just to clarify about your car choices, fantastic choice with the Porsches. I just wanted to almost go back on my Aston, because the Aston, I think, is the best car rather than the car that I'd want to be in. I think it's horrendously boring to drive, and I'd probably want to be in my NSX from last year. I love that car, a car David Johnson.
The NSX is a really nice car. It's a car that I think deserves more love than it actually gets. And David Junt currently sitting, looks like P12. Of course, we're still 2 minutes left into warm-up, so all of this is just kind of here nor there. This is just the cars going around. This is everybody, I think, just trying to get the jitters out of the way. And, you know, as a driver, Becky, it's nice to have you in the booth as a driver because you have that unique perspective. As a driver, what do you use the warm-up for? Is it pacing around and just kind of loosening up? Is it getting your nerves away? What is the warm-up really for you?
For me, it's getting used to your race setup again. You've just been going absolutely flat out. The fastest you're going to go all weekend in your qualifying setup, if you have one. I don't often have a qualifying setup, but still, you're running low fuel. You're going absolutely all out. You don't care about the tyres, and now it's dial it back. Let's get used to what we're going to do in the race. What's going on right now through a lot of drivers' heads is going to be, oh my god, do I want softs like dries or wets? You can see Matt Beast there. He seems to already be going offline to get some wet. Oh no, he's just stopping. But there's already that dry line forming, so they're going to have a lot of hard decisions.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd want to be in the driver's seat right now because I don't know I don't know which tires I would pick. It's the dry line is starting to form there, and I think if any of the drivers start on wets, they're gonna very quickly have to go back to dries. But the hill, Eau Rouge through Radion, that as we see Oliver Newman doing a bit of a wiggle there. That is the sole reason I would pick wet tires, is just going up Eau Rouge and Radion. That is the only reason that I think I would want to lean towards wet tires, because that is easily the scariest part of the track.
Well, you know what they say, always be on the right tyres for the right time. So if at the moment it's wet tyres, and Oliver Newman does seem to be on the rain tyres at the moment and still struggling that much for Eau Rouge and Radion, I don't think I'd want to be risking it on the dries. But then, if this rain stops and it is light rain, the time that you could gain by taking a chance and having the dry tyres on, it's gonna really shake things up and be interesting if the rain stops shortly.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking through the timing table, and like Mike Bell is in the Isota. He's on medium tires and he set a 2:17.4. But our fastest lap from Timon Suvic is a 2:16.9. And again, this is warm-up, so take everything I'm saying with grains of salt, maybe even just a salt mine in general. So I don't know where the track's at, and I don't know where I'd want to be if I was them. But this is going to be the grid. So let's run you down the grid here for this. So Oliver Newman, Daniel Herlock, Daniel Kirby, and Timon Suvic will be rows 1 and 2. And then from there, it's Wouter de Bruin, Jerry Chen, Michael Locke, and Tom Lane in P8. From there, P9 is going to be Ernest Bernaldo. And then P10 going down into John Ullian. P11, Bradley Sellers. P12, Magnus Dahlgren in the Alpine. From there, P13, Craig Pullen. 14th place is going to be Stedane Stoffmeal. And then Scar Pope will be 15 with Jason Whitehead in P16. From there, it's P17, it's Mike Bell. And then we go P18 of George Angelides. P19 is John Mahler, and P20 Eric Monet. The two Porsches side by side, the teammates starting on the same row. We'll see how that battles out. From there, P21 Luke Mitchell, P22 Luke Goodlife, P23 Brian Hall, P24 is David Junt. From there, it's going to be P25, which is going to be Eugene Mazur, and then Johnny Gutierrez, Matthew Bice, and Joe Wilkes, P27, P28, respectively. And then from there, it's P29, which is going to be Peter Meyer, P30, Wayne Galvin, Stephen Bice in P31, and Josh Lipperty in P32. Keep it going right along here. P33, Ross Smith. P34, Stephen Miller. P35, Ryan Reyes. And P36 is Mike Bice. Then from there, we're going to get P37, James Walker. P38, Carl Strohall. James Bowders. And P39, and Filippo Marazzi. And P40. From there, it's going to be P41, which is going to be Adam Gray. P42, Giles Lalonde. P43, Norman Graff, Hypercar back in the back, and Vinicius Gonzalez in P44. From there, P45, Benjamin Porteous Heath. P46, Kyle Vessa. P47, Matthew Overton. P48, JT Tammy. And then from there, it is going to be P49 is Mr. Zakic back in the back by himself in the Porsche 963. So 49 cars to tackle Spa today.
So what we're going to see now is some hypercars going through. It looks like almost everyone has gone for the safe option, as you said, and gone with the rain tyres. I was going to say, as they're going through this sort of 4-minute warm-up lap, the track's going to get wet, and it's going to be too wet for dry tyres. But we're still seeing a few risk it. Some further back on the grid have risks the dries. And we've got a very odd combination, unless it is our live timing messing up. But James Bowders has a rain and a hard. A rain front and a hard rear, perhaps. And it looks like also Benjamin Porteous Heath in the Toyota Hypercar has also gone for a rain front and a medium rear.
That's interesting. I don't have a good answer for that one, but we'll keep our eyes on it and see exactly where that one lands, because I wouldn't think that they would do mixed sets like that, but that could just be a graphical glitch here in R Factor 2 as the drivers kind of go down. This is gonna be a scary race start, I think. And again, it's just because of the dampness of the track. I think overall these drivers will be able to handle Spa just fine, but I think the dampness of the track is going to make the race start a little more difficult than normal. And a lot of the hypercars, the hypercar AMs, I see John Maher and I see Luke Mitchell are registering for me on mediums. So those two up in the middle part of the grid, that's going to be ones to watch, I think. Because the only thing I can think of why you would start on mediums and risk being slow off the race start or on the dry tire off the race start, is because they want to try to save a pit stop. They think it's going to dry out fast enough that if they just struggle for a couple minutes, it'll be just fine.
That's exactly what I would have been thinking too, sitting in warm-up, but it looks like the rain's actually picked up. So we're going to have a very interesting start here, as both Dan Herlog and Dan Kirby in the Isotas passing the rain are going to be looking to jump past Oliver Newman as quickly as possible, because the Alpine's not going to be as fast in the rain.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. We already see people going loose there. That is going to be Herlock stopping up there. So, but we are green. We're underway for 90 minutes here of Circuit Spa-Francorchamps in the VWSC Virtual World Sports Car Championship. And right away, Oliver Newman is trying to set the pace quickly. But remember, they have the orange zone all the way up the hill of Le Rouge and Radion, all the way down the Kimmel Straight, all the way through Lecombe, all the way through Ravage, going down into Speaker's Corner. And now GT3s under the lead of David Junt are going to start their race. As the hypercars are running up the hill through Le Rouge and Radion, the GT3s are getting things underway here. They come across the line with David Junt in the lead, and you can see the wipers are on. The rain is coming. I have a feeling that anybody who opted for dry tires is probably kicking themselves right about now.
Absolutely, it's not the tyre to be on. I don't know what happened with Dan Herlock at the beginning there where he seemed to stop, but he's already caught right back up to a second behind Oliver Newman, just showing the absolute pace of that Isotta in the wet.
Absolutely. Our resident pit reporter, Mr. Reese, is in chat and says, let the madness commence. I don't think this is going to be madness. And of course, the conversation in YouTube is about how many people are mixed up. There are a lot of names out of place here, Becky, and I think that's going to be one of the big stories to keep their eye on.
Yeah, the most interesting one in my eyes is going to be JT Tammy coming through the GT field. He was busy today, or out, I'm not sure which, but he didn't have time to get back. He just got back in time for the race, and starting from the back, he's going to be working his way through the field and seeing how far up he can get.
Yeah, if anyone can do it, I would think JT Tammy can. So we'll keep our eyes on. That's a hypercar off to the side. Who is that? That is Benjamin Porteous Heath. What has he found himself into there to slide his way around? That is probably not what you want to do. And we'll get a quick replay here, and let's see if we can tell exactly what's happened to him. And yeah, just off there, down at the end, into the Kimmel straight there, into Lecombe. No, that's a big off at the top of the hill. So that's what started the mess. And then it looks like he's just trying to nurse that car down. And I'm going to imagine at the end of the Kimmel straight going into Lecombe just completely misses the braking zone. We'll see here, because you can see the steering's off a little bit. You can see the bottom scraping. I mean, I said El Rouge and Radion were the places to watch, and I wasn't wrong. I wasn't wrong. Oh, and there's his round.
That looks to me like the live timing is right, and he has dry tyres on his rears, because that rear end is just looser than a goose.
Why would you do split tires like that? Why would you want dry tires on the back but rain tires on the front?
Either it was an accident, or he thought that maybe it would work. Maybe he tested it. There's been lots of rain through testing for people who practice running up to this. Maybe he had a go, but I would have thought it'd just be a complete accident. Hit the wrong button.
Yeah, it's very. I wouldn't want to be the driver to try that, but you know what? Sometimes drivers do things that here in the booth, I'm just like, you know what? If they make it work, they make it work, and I kind of let it go, because sometimes that's all we can do. Watching the battle here with Bradley Sellers and John Ulian that are trying to chase each other down. This is going to be the battle for P7, and then of course up in front of them that is P6. So we're going to watch and see how this goes. A lot of just single file gentle running right now. I don't see anything too wild.
We've got Brad Sellers coming around Jerry Shen. So that is Jerry Shen. That is a four-wheel drive car making it past a rear-wheel drive car, and Bradley Sellers and Wouter de Bruin are going to be thanking their lucky stars that they decided to change to the Peugeot, the four-wheel drive car, because they just changed from a two-wheel drive Acura for this race, which looked like it was going to be a bad idea. The Acura was the pick of the crop, wasn't it? But here comes the rain, and they're flying in their four-wheel drive Peugeots.
We did say before that the all-wheel drive cars with the rain would have a big advantage, and it does seem that way, because when I look, it is Oliver Newman still in the lead there in the Alpine, but then as you watch down, it is an Isotta, a Peugeot, an Acura, a Porsche, and another Peugeot. So, I mean, if you look at the hypercar runs, the all-wheel drive cars are having just a great time here around Spa as we run down. This is going to be heading down into the bus stop, and we'll see Ernest Bernaldo thinking about a dive there, not able to make anything land. Further back, this is our man George Angelides, who is trying to run through in the hypercar. AM's currently sitting P2 and is a long way back from Jerry Chen.
Yeah, he's got to be thinking at the moment, just keep it on the road, hope Jerry makes a mistake. Maybe he's playing the long game, making sure that he does a free stop and hoping Jerry's going to be four stopping. So George will have a plan, and he will just be sticking to it at the moment and hoping that it comes through. Oh, there goes Kirby on Herlock.
Dan
Battle
Kirby
for second.
Run down the Kimmel straight. This is for P2 overall. Does he make it stick? They start to go side by side there through Lecombe, and Dan Kirby, you thought about it, but you just weren't close enough there. And that's of course the Isotta on the Isotta, but man, the slipstream down the Kimmel straight for these hypercars especially is going to be huge.
Absolutely, and especially as if they've gone for wet setups, they'll have a bit higher wing as well. than they'd normally have at Spa, which will mean even more effect from the slipstream. What we're going to see here, though, very soon is both Dans swarming all over Oliver Zoom-in Newman.
Oliver Zoom-in Newman. I haven't heard that one before, and I might borrow that for the rest of the season if you don't mind, Becky.
It's not from me. That is Oliver's nickname.
Oliver Zoom-in Newman. He is zooming right now, so I'll give him that as we run through. We're heading down. This is going to be down into Paul Ferrer, and he's just trying to... I mean, the cars look slippery. They don't look like they're having a good time, regardless of what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. The cars are all over the place, which really just shows what a great job Oliver's doing. I thought that the two Dans would be straight past him with their Sotters, but he's still holding on to the lead and keeping it at a second a lot of the time. It's fantastic.
Yeah, James is in our ear telling us that there's been so many offs that he keep tracking. Who was that GT3?
James Bowder's pulling into the pits right in front of Oliver. That was a close one.
Oh, that was questionable. GT3s are gonna have a very bad day here, I feel. Even though this is GT3 heaven, that was you gotta wonder, was that a case of just get out of the way, or was he trying to?
He was just pulling into the pits.
Whew, man, that was rough. But meanwhile, Herlock, Kirby, and then that's another hypercar that's been off ahead of them going up the hill, and Herlock and Kirby still side by side. Mind the lap car, and watch this down the Kimmel Straight side by side. Who gets away with it here? It's going to be Herlock to the outside, Kirby to the inside. Kirby's not close enough to make that stick, and now Herlock runs off track, and now we go through, and it is Kirby through, because Herlock has to give up the place because he's ran off track there going through the calm.
Fantastic racing, and Dan Kirby's going to try and capitalise straight away to get past Oliver Zoom-in Newman from that, but Herlock's going to be also trying to desperately get that place back, but they have to be so careful at the moment because, as you saw, so easy to make a mistake. That was probably just a little bit of a lock-up from Dan Herlock, and he had to run on, he had to let Kirby through, and that is the place.
Yeah, you've got to be very, very careful at the end of the braking zone of the Kimmel Straight. It's such a long straightaway on this track, and then you just have to completely lock it down there for Lacombe. And if you don't do it the right way, you can really, really get in troubles. We ride on board here with Dan Kirby, who is trying to chase down Newman. Look at the car, and just it's not. I'm so used to seeing these hypercars planted, stuck, and running. And you can tell with the rain, they're sliding around. Here's Ernest Bonaldo trying to chase down Michael Locke, and I mean, just look at the pressure. If you've got this set up right and you've got things put together for Spa, you are having a great run here. And we're only 10 minutes into this 90-minute race.
Yeah, I'm used to seeing Ernest Bonaldo a little bit higher than this, so he's suffering in this rain in the Porsche at the moment, and he's stuck behind Michael Locke in the all-wheel drive Ferrari, and he's going to be really wishing he can get past, because Mike Bell is going to be picking up confidence and picking up speed in his all-wheel drive Sotter as well, and Wouter de Bruyn is behind him. He was running fourth a minute ago. Here goes Wouter on Mike Bell, and Wouter gets through into the bus stop. Does Mike Bell fight back? That was a tight one. Good move by Wouter, and at the same time a good move by Ernest. So 2 places for the price of 1 there for us viewers.
Yeah, but here's going to be where things get fun, is he gets it through the bus stop, but now going in back through La Source, it's now 2x2 as we run down the pit straight to Eau Rouge, and we'll see just how this goes. They slot back in single file, but now it's second verse same as the first. You get the pass done in the bus stop, and now it settles back in here, going up the hill through Radillon, and now we're down the Kimmel Straight. Look at this side by side. Goes Ernest Bernaldo trying to get the pass done on Michael Locke for P8. I think he finally gets it through that time, and he's going to bring a friend along with him, I believe, of Mike Bell. He does bring Mike Bell through. Mike Bell trying to squeeze around and does get by there. No!
Here comes Wouter.
Wouter de Bruyn.
Wouter wanted that one. Wouter's probably thinking that should have been me after he got through Bell on the bus up. Oh, there goes Wouter, and there goes Bell being wide. Oh, he holds up Wouter. Micah's coming back.
Oh,
I think
and he's
Wouter
getting
holds on.
loose. Man, I tell you what, the all-wheel drive is making such a difference here on this track, and you don't really notice it until they get into battles like that. But it is, the all-wheel drive cars are really loving this track.
You say that, but it's Ernest getting away from them now.
Yeah, I think Ernest is getting away, though, because they're battling. I think it's just a case of, you know, the natural thing. If you battle, the cars around you are going to get away. And I think once these three settle themselves out, we're going to start to see Ernest just pulled back into the mix here.
Yes, probably will. Oh, Benjamin Porter's Heath is out of the race, it seems. And we've also had Mr. Reese, thank you very much for the reminder. Wouter de Bruyn did have a penalty that dropped him back, so expect to see him flying through the field.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. And Benjamin Porteous Heath with the split tire strategies are first DNF. We have seen several drivers into the pits already, so it looks like most of those are the drivers that started on dry compounds. The only person still on a dry compound is Luke Mitchell that I see. Everyone else, from what I can tell, looking through John Mayer, Jason Whitehead, Norm Graff, James Bowders, and Joe Wilkes have been into the pits back in the back, and they have switched on to rain-only tires. So it is Spa, it is raining, the track is too wet, and it's very close. We started out with 50, we're down to 49 left, and we'll see just what drops through. JT Tammy on the back of Ross Smith here. That's the Aston Martin. Becky, you said that car would be the most boring, but probably the safest option, and then the Ferrari, which is really the fun car.
I wouldn't go as far as saying the Ferrari is the fun car. The Ferrari is a challenging car. I think JT is just going to be... He's not going to want to bide his time, because the longer he waits behind Ross, the further away the front guys get. The further away Johnny Gutierrez, Eugene Mazur get. Podium slipping away. So he's going to want to make this pass quickly. But the thing that the Ferrari has is it has torque. It has buckets of torque. It has torque for days. So you see coming out of corners, even if the Ferrari's not strong through the corner, the Aston can't pull up on it. So he's got to pull something a little bit risky to get past this Ferrari.
I feel like risky is the name of the game here around Spa. Just the nature of the track in general and everything that this track presents. Risky seems to be just what you've got to be comfortable with. Spa is a interesting track, and we saw it with the historics that, you know, this track can be very, very crazy. Of course, the historics running the 60s layout as it was, but you saw just the risk that you have to take around this track in general. And even though the layout has shrunk down, it's gotten more, you know, condensed, it still feels like a track to me that you've got to be willing to take risk to make things happen. And we tend to see that happen through Ross Smith and JT Tammy still single file here, battling it out as we run up the hill through Rouge and Radion, and they are going to stick it single file here. But JT Tammy right on the back of that Ferrari has slipstreamed down the Kimmel Straight. Can he get the pass done by the end of the Kimmel Straight is the question.
I think not. I think the Ferrari's going to hold him. Oh, Voss is going defensive. Now Voss is on the wet line, so that should allow JT to just outbrake him going through and into Lacombe.
Oh,
side by side. Oh, into the second part of Lacombe. JT has it. Voss is not giving up, though. He's not giving up. Voss is still trying, but I think he's had to see reason there and give up. There's no point fighting into Riviage. Ross would just plough into the side of JT, and JT gets the job done. Another one bites the dust. Moving on for JT. The next one up is his teammate of James Walker.
I can't imagine James Walker is going to make it a hard time for JT Tammy if JT Tammy is working on charging through the field. But I think Ross Smith can still try to fight through and come back and get a little bit closer. It's going to be interesting to see just where that goes. But again, this is a 90-minute endurance race. There could be fuel strategy. There could be a lot of different things in the mix here that, you know, we don't get to see behind the scenes for the drivers trying to pick what their options are through. Again, we're expecting at least 2 stops for the GT3s and I believe 3 to 4 for the hypercars, depending on who tries what strategy. So that'll really mix things up. An hour and 13 minutes left to go here in this race. Already been pretty exciting, and our producer has said 35 cars will finish. He hasn't said that in the year.
That's a very bold prediction there by James. We've actually had 2 changes for the lead in the time that we've been watching the GTs, because we've had Oliver Newman drop back, who's 7-8 seconds back, and then Herlock going off here. Oh, that was a lock-up and a half for Herlock, and that is the Asota's big weakness. While we say the all-wheel drive cars, they will fly in the wet, they're going to love the wet, the Asotas love to lock up. You see it all the time. You will remember from Imola, the Asotas locking up, going sideways through a bend. That's because they're so easy to lock, and the range is going to make it even easier to lock. Is that Oliver Newman there? That's not Oliver Newman, is it? Oh, it is Oliver Newman coming through some GT3 traffic. He's still holding on well, Oliver Newman.
Yeah, the GT3s are doing well to also, not make things too difficult for the hypercars. And I think that's a skill as a GT3 that I think you just learn as your time goes, of how to kind of, help facilitate the pass and not make anything too crazy. Obviously, the overspeed, something we talk about, and Oliver Newman very quick there up the top of the hill through Radion, and you could see around that GT3 just snapping through. I believe that was one of the bices that got through. And now we have John Ulian, Ernest Bonaldo here in P12 with John Ulian in P11. There's been an off for him, and we'll see what happened to him here. And is this just a hard lock of the brakes going into the bus stop?
That was a very close one for Ernest.
Let's see, and then we have Felipe here that is gonna too much curb up the hill, and very lucky to save that. Honestly, that's one of those that when you're going up the hill. Yeah,
great save by Marazzi there.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but let's jump back live really quick because Filippo Marazzi here is still running. And then Oliver Newman into 4th.
Yeah, he's going to be fairly happy with that. He's going to be ruining the little mistake that's dropped him back, but he's still holding a very good pace. Holding Tom Lane behind in the Porsche 5 seconds behind. And in front, he only has all-wheel drive cars, which is sort of to be expected, really. He can't really be doing much better than he is. So, fantastic drive here from Oliver Newman.
Yeah, and I think the big thing with Newman is going to be that he just needs to stay relaxed. It's 7.4 seconds, 7.1, 6.9, 6.7. Like, he's gaining time to the cars ahead, but it's just a matter of how quickly can he gain through. Magnus Dahlgren here with John Ulian that are trying to chase each other, and then there was a drive-through from Imola, which has let things through and is kind of mixing things up. There were a lot of penalties, honestly, that were carried over from Imola. It was kind of, looking at the steward sheet, there was quite a few penalties that were carried over from Imola. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 penalties, which is, I don't feel like that's normally how many we see between rounds here in the Modern.
No, well, Imola is such a tight track, so hard to overtake. That's why there was so many more instances there than normal. Here comes Magnus. No, thinking better of it. John Ulian is just going to have a world of mirrors full of Alpines and Porsches at the moment, because Ernest is coming back from his mistake. Magnus is coming back from his drive-through, and they're both going to want to be pushing past John and moving on up.
Yeah, you can tell that there is a race, a race behind the race. You can tell there's a little bit of strategy. There's a little bit of, difference here going on. And it is the matter of, if you're not in a all-wheel drive car, there's a little bit of survival that's being played here. Up the hill we go yet again with Magnus Dahlgren. And you can see you've got to mind that curb. And you see just how slippery that hypercar is, because it is so... It's just... The hypercar is so fast that sometimes I worry that it outruns itself, and you've just got to be on top of it. We jump back here with Luke Goodlife, who is coming through turn 1 here and is trying to get things going, and then Goncalves there just ahead that he is trying to get past as they run down towards El Rouge and Radion again.
That's the fight for 5th in Hypercar AM. It's quite a close battle there. They don't have too many others around them, so I'm not sure who that is in front of them, but they're going to be very fixated on each other, which will be interesting when they come up to the GT3s. how they deal with that as well. Good luck closing.
Yeah, so it's P20 and P21 overall, and you can see there on the left-hand side just how spread out this field is. Spa is a longer track too, which is very interesting to see for me, because when you look at the laps, I mean, we're seeing almost 2-minute 25, 2-minute 30-second laps is about the average of the field. So everybody is pretty much, if you're not battling someone around you, you don't have anyone around you. Spa is probably one of the longer tracks that we're going to go to here, other than, of course, Le Mans.
And when you don't have anyone around you in the rain, it really becomes hard to know how hard to push, because lap by lap, the conditions change in the rain. It doesn't stay the same, even with all these cars going around, with the constant rain coming down. You don't know how to push. And that car in front really is that guide. So quite often you will see like this with Goncalves and Goodlife just sticking together, because Goodlife is just pacing himself off of Goncalves.
Yeah, and the other thing with that too is I think if Goodlife, has, just keeps the pace, then Goncalves up front has a moment, then Goodlife, just gains a free spot. Doesn't have to fight for it, really. Gets a free spot and can really just pace out time, pace things through. We're 24 minutes into this race, and I believe we're starting to hit the point where we should start seeing hypercar pit stops, if I'm not mistaken. We're thinking about 20 to 25 minutes.
Yeah,
is that what we're thinking?
We will be seeing them soon, but they're all going to be making the most of this wet weather and saving as much as possible. You'll see hypercars lifting and coasting. Oh, we've got Vessa and Smith here. Vessa looking to go past. No, not down here. And it looks like we've got Matthew Overton, who's coming through the field behind them as well. So he's going to be looking to get past both of them in just a moment.
Yeah, we'll see what Overton can do. Ross Smith, he said the Ferrari was a little tricky around here, and he wasn't wrong. Kyle Vessa and the Mustang right on his tail. We've got a hypercar there. That's one of the Cadillacs that is making their way through as well. And you've just got to mind the traffic. But then also as the hypercar behind, you're kind of watching and you're saying, okay, this is two GT3s that are racing really hard. Where can I sneak my way through here without causing a problem for anybody? And that, I think, is the big question. And again, there's still not a moment, because these GT3s, Smith and Vessa, are basically side by side here. And the hypercar says, okay, I'm gonna settle my way in. I'm gonna just set single file for a minute.
Yeah, it's definitely the best option there, especially when Normgraf is a bit down on everyone else at the moment. He can just sit and wait and bide his time. And there he goes past Vessa. Where's he going to go past Ross though? Because it's straight away got him. So that's worked out well for Normgraf and well for Vessa, because it meant that Ross hasn't managed to get as big a gap as he could have done. But we have got Overton now as well, trying to come up on Vessa. And Vessa's going to be desperate to hang on to this, because he wants to nail Ross and then get away a bit.
Yeah, it looks like into the bus stop. He hit the brakes there, but wasn't close enough to try to have a lunge into the bus stop. Overton, again, just staying right there behind. Another hypercar is coming into the mix. That's one of the BMW hypercars, but let's ride on board here with Kyle Vessa as they head down into La Source and see what he can do. And you can see that it looks like just the Mustang's a little more compliant than the Ferrari there. And now we have the run down the pit straight up to Eau Rouge and Radion. And this is going to be the case of where he needs that slipstream. He needs that speed, but it's also just hang on the racing line there, mind the curbs, and now we head down the Kimmel Straight very, very fast, but still not close enough. There goes the hypercar, and not close enough to have any slipstream or any help there. And it's just, again, buying your time there if you are Kyle Vessa. But look in the bottom right there, look at that, 250 kilometers an hour in a Mustang.
I think that actually he's probably set the Mustang up for the wet. The Mustang's a very heavy car, and I imagine a lot of them have probably gone with quite a high wing there, which is why Vessa couldn't get on terms with Ross on the straight.
Yeah, it's interesting to me to see, because 250 kilometers an hour is interesting, but I did expect a little bit more speed down the Kimmel Straight from the GT3s, so we'll see where that lands. Another DNF here of Pullins, and we'll see. This is Pullins already gone, trying to get off of the racetrack. what's happened here, and this is going to be big slide into Pouon there, running wide. You're not Lewis Hamilton in a wonderful Mercedes F1 car. You run wide through Pouon, and now you go through. We'll see.
Didn't Ricard, didn't Zonta it, or Villeneuve, wrong corner, but still.
And there it is. And then just drops after that. So
Good avoiding action by everyone behind, especially in the wet, all stayed under control.
yeah, that's a skill that you really have to learn as a driver, is how to avoid a wrecking car ahead of you. It's one that I'm still learning, honestly. Dan Kirby's into the pits. Bradley Sellers is in the
Dan
pits.
Herlock, DNF.
Oh, Dan Herlock. What has Dan Herlock done here?
Oh dear.
What is...
I assume a mechanical of some sort. Well, that's a real shame that he's pulled off. Oh, bit of a lock-up beforehand. So he's had a few lock-ups. Perhaps he's had a bit of a brake issue, and now he's just called it quits. In the meantime, we've had our first pit stops. A lot of the Assotters have come into pit. We've had Dan Kirby come in, Mike Bell come in. So Oliver Zoomin Newman is back in the lead for a while. We've had Micah Lockin in the Ferrari, John Urian, Ernest Bernaldo, George Angelidis. It's all starting now. Luke Goodlife and Gonzalez are in the pits together as well. That'll be a good battle between those two.
That will be a very good battle. This is where things get very interesting to me. When the pit stop cycles start, this is where things get mixed up, because you've got to remember there's still a lot of strategy to play, and the hypercars have ran a little bit longer than I think we expected, especially with the wet weather and not being completely flat out the whole time. They made it 30 minutes, so if you do the math, if they fuel save right, they could make it on just one more pit stop.
That's got to be
fuel save right.
Got to be what Oliver Newman, Tom Lane, Wouter de Bruin are all thinking. They just take it easy, hope the rain keeps coming, and then they'll get everyone at the end.
This is going to be Luke Mitchell chasing John Ulian that we have on our screens as we look through. And again, I'm just trying to think about strategy, because Dan Kirby with a 2:17 is our fastest lap through, but I see a lot of the hypercar field running in the mid 220s, 223s, 225s. So it's going to be real interesting to see where the fuel saving is in. And now Oliver Newman is into the pits along with Wouter de Bruin. So Tom Lane stays out. Tom Lane will assume the race lead as we tick over the 30 minutes mark of this 90 minutes here of Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps as we go through here. And we've already had a few DNFs. We've had a lot of action, and the rain is really just making things fun. It's making things really interesting to watch through. Becky, do you wish you would race this weekend?
I do and I don't. I'm not well enough. The last two races I've done have really messed me up. Well, I'm not quite well enough to be racing, so I'm happy in here. It's fun watching wet races, isn't it? Sometimes more fun watching than being in them.
Yeah, it is fun. Dahlgren's in, Rice is in, Buis is in, De Bruin's in. Lots of cars into the pits here that are really mixing things up. And
so this is the GT3s are all starting to stop. It's been half an hour. They might as well stop. So we're going to see two strategies from the GT3s. We're going to see the people just going, oh, I can go a bit longer. You might see a Eugene Mazur, a Peter Meyer try and one stop with this rain. And others are going to be going, no, I'm just going to get these tyres off, get some fresh tyres on, and just bang out lap after lap after lap and two stop.
You know, interesting note, as I look here through the grid, we still have Luke Mitchell registering on the medium tires on the dry compound in that Assoda.
We do. That's incredible. He's in the pits right now. I wonder if he's going to be going onto the wet. Surely he's got to. Surely this track is too wet to carry on.
He's made it 30 minutes though. He's made it 32 minutes. I don't know. We'll see what his option is as he comes out. I'm also trying to keep an eye on when Timon Suvic and Tom Lane decide to pit. But of course, in the GT3s, when does David Junt, Johnny Gutierrez, and Eugene Mazur come in? When do those three decide they want to pit? Because those are our top three right now in LMGT3.
They're going to be pushing as long as possible, seeing if they can push close to 45 minutes. Oh, we've got Tom Lane in. So the lead will pass back to Dan Kirby now, as he's coming up on one of the Mustangs. Nice easy pass there.
Yeah, and of course, remember that Dan Kirby has already pit once, so that shows, where the pace lies and where things are. Dan Kirby now in the lead by 3 seconds on Bradley Sellers, and will continue to run through. And I do think the Hypercars can make it on one more stop. A little bit of fuel saving in the mix, and I think Dan Kirby can make one more stop work. It's sketchy, but it's possible. And of course, if this rain continues to lighten up, it may push them into like a splash and go at the end. But I do agree with you. I think the GT3s are going for a one stop.
I don't think Dan Kirby can make it on one more stop, but Tom Lane, Timon Suvic, and Oliver Newman are all going to be thinking, I can do this on one more stop. I can two-stop this if the rain comes. In the GT3s, they will be pushing towards a one-stop, but honestly, I think it's going to be a bridge too far, apart from a few of them who are very good at saving fuel. And I do wonder whether JT Tammy is going to be one of those that could push it towards a one-stop. So it'll be interesting to see in the next sort of 10-12 minutes how many of those GT3s come in and when. As we've got John Meyer going past George Angelidis, and that is for second in Hypercar AM.
Yeah, John Meyer, George Angelidis. George Angelidis now down into third in Hypercar AM, and John Meyer there. Oh, that is a stationary GT3. Who was that?
Is that one of the Corvettes? Yep, I think it is one of the Bices, one of the Beisty boys.
Oh, what happened here? Just station. Oh, the Hypercars. That was
fantastic avoidance. Oh, and it's with a Hypercar going through. Oh, just squeezed after Michael Locke went through in the Ferrari. He did well to hold on to it. People are doing very well here in the wet. Even though Steve Bice lost it, he held it well, and everyone avoided Magnus and Ernest Bernardo. These are Magnus catching the rear of Ernest as he's going past. That's a real shame.
Oh, it looks like he had the pass done, and then one car gets loose and catches the other out. And this is through Lacombe at the end of the Kimmel Straight. You could see there Bernardo with the pace. And then they both
of them fighting back through the field after Ernest has been off and Magnus has had a drive through. So that's a real shame that they both got caught out in that, but it just shows how easy it is. These are guys used to fighting right at the front. Slipping and sliding. Ernest off again. Here comes Magnus.
Ernest running wide there at Speaker's Corner, and then Magnus says, "Thank you very much. I tried once. I'll try again. I will go ahead and take P11 and run away with it." And again, this is for P11 overall. So there we go. He's through. Thank you very much. There's another DNF going through, and let's see. This is going to be Mustang.
Galvin.
What has happened to Galvin here?
That looks like another, probably just technical. He just drives off. Lost steering wheel. It just lost everything. It lock up and then carries on. It looks like it's not even turning. Just wheels packed up. Broken suspension. And in the meantime, we've had quite a few GTs coming into the pits. There's Gutierrez, Mazur, Smith and Vesser all pitting, not making it to the magic 45-minute mark. So they're going to be locked onto a two-stop now.
Yeah, Benjamin Porteous Heath, just trying to get some info on the background of what exactly has been going on. Benjamin Porteous Heath said the car was undrivable in the wet, which is why I'm out of today's race. And then Tom Mountjoy kind of calls him out and says, "At least you were on the broadcast. They said you had drives on the back and wets on the front." So that could be something. And then Dan Herlock disconnected, tried to rejoin, but 0 fuel left. It was before the pit box was impossible to move. So that is why Dan
That's
Herlock
a real
is
shame
out.
for Dan Herlock. In the meantime, Michael Lock just made such a tidy pass on Ernest. I've got to imagine Ernest didn't change his tyres. He is slipping and sliding all over the place. He's like a pig riding on ice.
It's, man, these cars, again, I'm so used to seeing these cars so much more stable than they are today. And it goes to show that rain is truly the great equalizer. This is going to be Wouter de Bruin and Tom Lane. This is a battle for P3 here. And this is P3 overall that is battling. And again, both these drivers have pit. So this is on track for position. We'll see here Wouter de Bruin with some pace against that Porsche 963. This is all-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive in the Pugo. And we'll see here in that 9x8, Wouter de Bruin thinking about a move into the bus stop. Doesn't do anything yet, but he's there. And Tom Lane knows he's there. And Tom Lane needs to make sure that Porsche stays on the track.
In the background, we've got Oliver Zoom Newman thinking, please fight more. But here comes Wouter around the outside. Has he got this done? I think he has. Job done. Just you can see the traction of the all-wheel drive cars. And Wouter has worked his way all the way up to third after having a drive-through. So fantastic drive from Wouter. And now he's just going to leave them in his dust with how wet the track is and how fast Wouter is going. He could not be happier that he switched to the Peugeot for this race now.
Yeah, I would be very, very happy myself if this was the situation I found myself in. Of course, Wouter de Bruin is a much better driver than me, so I would never find myself in this situation. But Wouter de Bruin with plenty of pace going through. And James Parfit in the ear, the Englishman who likes NASCARs, Tom Lane and Oliver Newman are side by side. Oh, that's a little bit of a tap, but it does look like Oliver Newman slides back, Tom Lane through, and James just trying to have a stab at me in the background, but it's okay.
Yeah. Oliver Newman getting nice and close there, but I think again they did well in the rain at the end of the Kemmel Straight to keep it all nice and tidy, keep it nice and civil. Oliver Newman's got to regroup though and have another try and see if one of these beastie boys get in the way of Tom Lane. Tom Lane flashing him there. Is that a flash of I'm a bit annoyed at you, or is it a flash of hey, I'm here?
Yeah, it could just be a, hey, I'm here, watch out, because...
It was quite a late flash, though, which a late flash like that is the international sign of please make this as difficult as possible.
Well, if there's anything we know, GT3s love to make passes on hypercars difficult and raise blood pressures of certain commentators about double.
Oh, it's not just a hobby, it's a passion.
It is. See, here's the thing. You decide to drive GT3, and rule number 1, you sign a contract saying, I will not let hypercars through. And that's all you do. And then the rest, you figure it out on your own.
It's not so much a contract. It's a blood oath.
Do you, Becky, something in your ear? Do you hear someone in your ear? Is there something there?
There's nothing, but there is Timon Suvic coming up on Mike Bell, another all-wheel drive versus two-wheel drive battle. But Timon in the two-wheel drive car is the one all over Mike.
Man, look at this. Mike Bell is just, feeling the pressure today. Timon Suvic just wiggling that car around. I don't have a great acronym for that or a great little descriptor. That car is wobbling all the way around. He's not able to make that Acura go through because it's not as stable.
He's riding it like a horse made out of jello. That's what I would say.
There we go. And now we've got Wayne Galvin, who said that R Factor 2 froze and disconnected.
Oh,
so
Wayne.
That is 5 out of 9 races that Wayne Galvin has lost out on because of a game freeze or a technical issue.
I feel that pain, Wayne. I went through a patch myself where it was something like 6 out of 8 races I had disconnects and things, and even this year it's not gone well for me in moderns. I've had incidents, and it happens, and it's horrible.
It stinks. It happens every once in a while. It's our equivalent to having a random O-ring on the brake pressure fail. if you're a Formula One fan, or just having, you know, any sort of random spark plug that doesn't work. And here we go. This is Timon Subic.
Electrical problem in these cars. They quite often have that.
Yeah. That is true. Timon Subic still trying to get a pass here, and forget electrical problems. He's just having a grip problem because that car is not happy. And I really thought we would have more of a dry line by now, but it's been just wet enough that it's kept things. Oh, there's the big bump. Oh, that was.
Oh, is he gonna have? He's gonna have to let Mike back through. He did bump there, didn't he?
From my screen, it looked like he had a big bump, and then Mike Bell is going to be very quickly on the radio. Very unhappy with that. And let's see if we can get a quick replay here and see what exactly happened. Because I mean, that wasn't just a bump. That was a full send through.
I don't know. See, my screen, it was a bit of a funny angle. It could have just been Mike going off, and then just take complete advantage of Mike going off, because you would. Timon's been slipping and sliding behind, riding his bucking bronco with his yellow horse, and he's finally been set free on to chase Sene Stoffmel in the BMW, the sole BMW out here.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one of those that we'll see how the drivers play it, and that may give us a little bit more of an indication. But the fact that Mike Bell hasn't gotten the position back kind of tells me that maybe that was an error on Mike Bell. I don't know. We'll see how things play as it goes through, but we do have Timon Subic up into P7 now. This is David Junt that's in the pits. GT3's still trying to make their way through. GT3 and Hypercar AMS are mixed together. Scar Pope is mixed in with the top two through, and then you still have cars that haven't pit. There are still
just had David Junt and Peter Meyer pitting. I think they were the last ones of the GT3s. I'm not sure if JT Tammy has actually, but everyone else has just pitted. They're missing out on that magic marker by 1.5 minutes for Peter Meyer and David Junt.
Man, they're going to have to save 1.5 minutes worth of fuel, which it doesn't sound like a lot, Becky, but I'm sure you can tell me from driver's experience, 1.5 minutes of fuel is a lot.
It's loads. It's actually 3 minutes of fuel, because they've got to make up that 1.5 minutes and then save 1.5 minutes more than last time. So it's 3 minutes of fuel. It's probably just not going to happen. Here's Matt Bice here. He is flying along in his Corvette, hassling Eugene Mazur. Eugene Mazur, who probably thought he had a good chance of a podium here today, and probably still has a chance of a podium. Matt Bice in the AM class, wanting to be on his back, hassling him.
The Corvettes look very, very good around here. They're very, very stable. Watch as he runs up El Rouge and Radion. Even though he takes a little bit more curb than really I would like. Look at that. He's very stable. The Hypercars don't look near as stable going through as the GT3s. This is truly a track that I think the GT3s are benefiting from, and certain ones are doing a lot better than others. So Matt Bice here continuing to run through and open up a gap on James Walker slowly but surely, and just continuing to charge through. Currently sitting in 29th place overall.
But he has 5 pro cars between him and Josh Lepetri in second. Walker is catching him. He's just taken half a second out of him. He is zooming up, and look, it's gonna go through here, straight through, like he's not even there. Bice ran a little bit wide, and Walker just said, "Yes, please, thank you very much. See you next week."
It doesn't look like he really made that difficult for him at all. He was kind of just like, okay, go through. And of course, this is. Yeah, that was a rough one through. It's half a second through the column. That's not a lot. George Angelides, Brian Hall here. This is the battle for 15th overall as it sits, and we'll see where this one lands. We've officially made it a minute past halfway through, and this is where things start to get interesting as Brian Hall and George Angelides running down here towards the bus stop chicane. Yet again, they are continuing to push through, and we'll see where things land for them. George Angelides in the Acura versus Acura action at the moment.
So I just wanted to give a big shout out halfway through, and after Ross was saying how the Ferrari's so hard, we're here saying how the Corvette looks so planted. Josh Lepetri is sitting in second in GT3 AM with Steve Bice chasing him down, but Josh Lepetri is holding him at a second behind at the moment. second overall in GT3 in the hard-to-drive Ferrari, in his beautiful space-themed livery.
I really like that livery. Some of these drivers come up with creative liveries as they go. And we see Jocelyn Petri here in 35th overall, second place in class, just running through. This is into the bus stop here. Stephen Bice in the background. You can see the gap closes into the bus stop, but then opens right back up. And now you go through. Scar Pope is our next DNF in the Hypercar AM class. So we're starting to see more drivers lose. I think we've only lost 5 drivers at the moment. We'll see, is this up the hill through El Rouge and into Radion? It is, and
no.
It's just into the grass.
Oh no.
Gone.
Oh.
Gone.
That was very anticlimactic, wasn't it? After he won the last 2 races in a row, hasn't he, in Hypercar AM, Scar Pope? So looking for his three-peat, and it should have all gone right with the rain and the Sotta, but unfortunately, it's all gone wrong for Scar.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate one to see Scar Pope out. Up front, Dan Kirby is just running through. Scar Pope makes our 5th DNF that we've had in 45, almost 50 minutes. Dan Kirby up in the front, though, currently looks like just a world of his own. He's holding a 3.3 second gap to Bradley Sellers and is just continuing to run there. That Isotta versus the Peugeot in P1 and P2. Just being nice and comfortable there.
Yeah, it's just Dan Kirby's probably just playing the game of keeping the gap at the moment. Why push any harder when he's got the 3-second gap? If he pushes any harder, he risks locking up those brakes. As I said, they're sort of very easy to lock the brakes, easier than quite a few of the other hypercars. So just keep going at a comfortable pace. They're doing 21s at the moment, although Brad was 7 tenths faster on the last lap. They're still doing 21s. They're 2 seconds a lap faster than anyone else on the track.
I mean, it's crazy to see the pace difference. Even if you think about if they're looking at fuel saving or whatever they might be looking at, these two right here that are keeping up with each other have a 40-second gap back to Wouter de Bruin. So the top 2 have just built the gap, and I think that means that they are going to try to squeeze an extra pit stop and make it work to try to hold a gap to Wouter de Bruin and do what they can here. This is going to be Mike Bell trying to chase down John Ullian there for P8 in the hypercar class.
That's a nice Isotta on Isotta. The Risotto Frappuccini versus the CMS Pro. I think it actually might be Joy Motorsport is their team name. I forget with Mike Bell, whether it's Mike Bell Motorsports Joy or the Risotto Frappuccino. But he's just got held up behind Stephen Miller. And there we have part of the blood oath from Stephen Miller. Do what you can to hold up the hypercars. This is all just a joke. I don't believe that Stephen was just running his line. Just all he did was run his line there, and it was just unfortunate that Mike got stuck behind.
I mean, you got to do what you can when you're a GT3, and sometimes it's up to you to just make the action for the broadcast. So a good job to Stephen Miller for making the action for the broadcast as we run down the Kibble Straight here with Eugene Mazur and James Walker. You can see that gap about 0.8 of a second, but they have a hypercar in the middle of them. And again, this is the blood oath continuing to go through. But if you're James Walker back in the back, you just want to stick to the back of that hypercar and see if he can't guide you around Eugene Mazur there for P4 over in your class. What can you do as a GT3 when you get a hypercar through? Do you just stick to the back of them and hope to work your way through, or do can you use the hypercar trying to get past your rival there for a moment, as we see James Walker almost going to the back of the hypercar?
James is going to want that hypercar to clear Eugene as quickly as possible and slow Eugene down into a corner while doing it. What he doesn't want is the hypercar in between him, because you saw there, he can outbrake the hypercar. So all it does is cause problems. But for Eugene there, it's not so much the blood oath that he's paying tribute to, it's he doesn't want to go off his racing line. Why would he go off that line that has a bit of grip on it and go off onto the wet off line with no grip and risk a lockup, risk a spin? No chance. He's going to wait for the hypercar to make a move. Quite right too.
Look at this. James Walker's pulled out 1.6 seconds on Mazur in the last lap. So now the gap is half a second. We'll see how that one ebbs and flows as things go there, Becky. It's interesting to me just how much the gap's kind of accordion, as we see Monet up in the top left corner has picked up a penalty. So we're starting to see some of these drivers not enjoy the rain for one reason or another, but we see penalties getting handed out, which can really ruin your day.
A penalty there. Another strange one is Johnny Gutierrez is in the pits with 38 minutes to go, which would be hard to do a stint of 38 minutes. He might just about be able to do it. But that's a strange one that he's pitting right now.
This could just be a late call on strategy. I don't know. That's the thing. I'm not the driver. I don't ever claim to really know what's going on in terms of the drivers' minds, because drivers always find a way to surprise me up here. That is the one rule here in any series, specifically this series. Drivers always find a way to surprise me with their strategy. So, Becky, I will reserve to you as the driver. Why would you pit with 38 minutes to go?
I worked it out as soon as I said it was a strange one. I reckon, although it's quite a long stop, but I reckon Johnny didn't change his tyres at the first stop, and then he's doing his splash in the middle. Because as we saw, quite a few of the GTs, they were getting close to that 45 minutes, but they weren't quite there. So if he does his splash now, puts on a fresh set of boots, and then just flies to the finish, when everyone else comes in, he's going to be flying back up the field as they all stop. He's already done his splash. That's what I'm thinking, unless he's damaged his car.
I think that would be a very good decision from him. So I could see that working very, very well. We'll keep our eyes on Gutierrez as things go, because
Meanwhile,
that's
here comes James Walker.
Decision. James Walker here, looking up the inside of Eugene, Missouri, but not able to get the pass done here. And as I say that, he gets up the inside and is going to get around. So there we go. That is James Walker up into P3 with a hypercar coming through in the mix.
He just did that because you said that he wasn't doing it. That's the only reason. He's listening in.
Probably. That tends to be what happens too, Becky. So the fun of the commentary booth, you say something's not happening and it does. You say a driver's name and they crash. And you never know what's going on with strategy sometimes until you figure out what's going on with strategy. Timon Suvic with a penalty in hypercars.
And I imagine that was Wouter de Bruyn just working his way through. Didn't seem to hold him up too much. He's surely thinking 46 seconds behind Dan Kirby, 44 behind Brad, 15 in front of Tom Lane. Just keep going. Keep on trucking, get that podium. A podium after a drive-through is nothing to sniff at.
Yeah, it'd be very, very good run. And then here's Kyle Vesa up the inside into the bus stop, getting past Eugene, Missouri with a very, very good pass up into P4 in the LMGT3. So good move there from Kyle Vesa to get up into the top four. Possibly a podium for him in the works too, if he can just keep nice and consistent. He's got 1.4 seconds up to Walker.
That's Eugene, Missouri losing 2 places in 1-2 laps. He must be on old tyres or made a little mistake, but Eugene Missouri is dropping back, and you can see Ross Smith in the background there. Is Ross Smith going to come and pounce on Eugene as well in a few laps' time? Are Carl Vesa and Walker going to continue their battle from earlier? There's a lot going on in GT3 at the moment. In the meantime, in GT3, JT Tammy has stealthed his way up into second place.
Yeah, JT Tammy's up into P2, but 36 seconds back on David Junt. David Junt looking very, very comfortable there. And P23 overall, P1 in the GT3s. Just trying to cruise through, have your day. I think that's the big key, is when you get up to the front, you need to just relax and breathe a little bit. But look at Hypercar. Look at the top left of your leaderboard there. It's Dan Kirby and Bradley Sellers, separated by half a second. Those two are, and we will possibly be seeing a battle for the lead overall start to develop here as we see they run down towards the bus stop. And look at this, half a second, 2.5 tenths. What is going to happen into the bus stop? It looks like the Isotta will hold on for the moment.
Kirby is a master of just holding on and placing his car in the right place as Bradley Sellers pulls into the pits. So that's a very good idea. If Brad thinks he can make it to the end now, 34 minutes is quite an ask. Maybe it's still 2 more. But it's got to be 2 more. It's got to be 2 more, hasn't it? 34 minutes in a hypercar?
I don't know. There's other hypercars in as well, so I don't know. Well,
I think that's a planned stop, And if he's going to be trying to either get the undercut on Dan or just get out into the clean air and get a pass on Dan. When Dan pits, I think they're both on the same strategy, Dan and Brad, which is the free stop. Most of the hypers will be on the free stop, but they're on a sort of let's just go as far as we can free stop, rather than the let's go as long as possible free stop that we saw like Tom Lane and Timon Suvic on.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue for Bradley Sellers is when you look at their fastest lap times and you look at their lap times overall. I mean, Bradley Sellers is running slower than Dan Kirby and Wouter de Bruin. So even with strategy.
That was his in-lap that was slower. Bradley Sellers has been closing in on Dan Kirby, so he's been running really fast. So what he wants to do by doing that is come out and run in some clean air. He obviously saw the gap that he has sped into. He's still in second place. If he can make sure that he hasn't got GT3 traffic and he can run some nice consistent laps, he'll jump Dan when Dan pits.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's very, very close. Yeah, we'll just have to keep our eyes on this battle as it keeps going, because I have a feeling that this is going to be one that goes down to the wire. Kyle Vesa still trying to go for that podium on James Walker and going for the podium in GT3. Look at that. The gap, 0.4 of a second, 0.3 of a second as they go down and run through the track. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're down in Rivage. And now we see where things go. Kyle Vesa looks very fast in the Mustang.
He does look very fast. The problem is the heavy Mustang is going to like it offline less than the other cars. Here he goes going offline. Is he going to be able to pull it out? He's not going to be able to brake late enough. Yeah, he can't brake late enough offline with the heavy Mustang. So it's really going to be a hard move. And as we have a hypercar going around the outside, is that Ernest or is that Tom Lane? I forget which one's the purple.
I believe it's Tom Lane.
And that's Magnus behind as well, I think, in the other hypercar.
Yeah, Tom Lane's gotten his way around the two GT3s battling there. So we'll continue to watch. Oliver Newman in 5th place at the moment in that Alpine and is just trying to stay very close. It's very close between Tom Lane, Oliver Newman. Timon Suvic's only 8 seconds back, which is not too bad, honestly, in terms of hypercar, with 30 minutes left to go here. So we're 2/3 of the race through now as we have Kirby into the pits here. The leader is in the pits. I see Georgi Angelidis is in the pits here, and a new best time in GT3 AMs of a 2:33.
Stellers has taken the lead and by quite some distance, so that must be Brad has not changed tyres and Kirby has changed tyres. For that big gap to have formed, is 8.5 seconds of gap formed. Got to be a tyre change. So now Dan Kirby is going to be hammering it as he comes out of the pits, 10 seconds behind now.
Yeah,
Lots of time to make up.
Yeah, that is a lot of time, but with 30 minutes left to go, it is doable if he can keep the car on the track and keep it just nice and smooth and consistent. Hopefully have no traffic issues. The blood oath doesn't come into effect. We'll see how things go for that. Mr. Reese says in chat, if a driver's running with a lower fuel mixture, they could possibly make it to the end from here.
Yeah, they could do. There was a few hypercars that made the 30-minute mark before, and I think we just had a few of them stopping, such as Timon Suvic. Got Stoff, Mel, Rice and Bell all in the pits at the moment. I would expect most of them pitting now will have to do one more stop.
It's going to be close. It's going to be very close. And I think even if they do have to do one more stop, it's going to be nothing more than a splash and dash and just get the fuel in, get the car out, and run it to the end here. 29 minutes left to go, and every second will count for this 29 minutes. Bradley Sellers in the lead by 4.3 seconds to Wouter de Bruin. Of course, Wouter de Bruin still needs to pit, so the big gap that we're looking at is between Bradley Sellers and Dan Kirby. 9.7 seconds as it stands, as those two have both made made 2 pit stops here, and we'll see if either of them opt for a third. I would imagine Bradley Sellers is going to have to make a third pit stop.
I imagine so. I imagine Dan Kirby will as well, but Dan Kirby's already taken a second out. It's down to 9. It was down to 8.5, so Kirby must have just got stuck behind a GT3 for a while. And that happens. It's just going to ebb and flow. But on the whole, if Kirby's got new tyres on, new set of boots, he's going to slowly be closing in as Routine pits as well. That could be his final stop with 28 minutes to go, but again, that's going to be really pushing it.
Yeah, we'll see where things land as the race goes through. It's gonna be close, and this is the fun part of endurance racing for me, Becky. This is the moments that I enjoy, because it's you know what's going on, but you don't truly know. And it sounds crazy to say it like that, but I enjoy the little bit of mystery in the mix of not knowing for sure who's going to have that win to the end. It's not the equivalent of, most other racing series that you see where somebody gets in the lead and then runs away with it, and then it's, oh, look, every week this person wins. I don't even need to watch the race. This is a series, and endurance racing in general, you don't really know where someone's at until the last few minutes. You don't know what the strategy is. You don't know what's going on. And even then, heartbreak can still come up. If you miscalculate the fuel, if you have, a GT3 come in the mix like we saw in Imola, you can have those moments where it just completely turns the race on its head.
Well, in that case, grab your pipe, grab your slippers, put your feet up, grab your popcorn, because Jerry Shen, who had a commanding lead in Hypercar AM, has just pitted, dropping him back to 3rd in Hypercar AM, where he's sort of on the border of will he, won't he pit again. So if he has to pit again and everyone else has to pit again, that's everyone one more time. But if Jerry doesn't have to pit again, he's back to his commanding lead. What is going to happen? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. And
Jerry will.
Yeah, the drivers obviously know, but we don't, and it makes it exciting. YouTube chat says they don't think any hypercars, if they pit now, need to do another stop.
It's going to be tight. There was only a very few of them that made it close to 30 minutes in the first stint. Of course, they could be going, okay, I've got big gaps, I'm going to turn down the engine a bit, I'm going to lift and coast more and make it last. But we'll really have to see on that one, as Josh LePetri now has taken the lead in GT3 AM, thanks to both Matt and Steve Brees coming in. Josh will probably still have one more stop to do, but it's nice for him to be showing that Ferrari in front for a change.
Yeah, it's nice to see the Ferrari going through in the front. I like the Ferrari. I do genuinely like the Ferrari GT3. I don't think it gets enough love for reasons, but I don't think it gets enough love. And so seeing the Ferrari represented there is very, very nice to see, as Josh LePetri has quite a bit of a gap there, 10.9 seconds.
He will have to pit again though, but Filippo Marazzi, who's behind, and Stephen Miller behind him, probably also all have to pit again. There's an interesting story behind the Ferrari and why it has a few of its woes. And that was when these cars were first being tested, the Ferrari was mega quick. It was hard to handle, but it was mega quick. And Mr. Kirby, the resident alien, did a bit of testing and was like, these cars are too quick. We need to slow them down a bit. And Mr. Kirby, being as fast as he is, and as skillful as he is, went, oh, we need to knock off more time. We need to knock off more time, until the Ferraris weren't very good anymore. Boo.
Boo. Everybody in YouTube chat, just say boo to that, because fast cars are fun cars. I'm still captivated by the pit strategy, because we're starting to see more hypercars in now for second stops. So Oliver Newman's been in and is on an outlap at the moment. We have seen several of the GT3s still need to pit. I've seen some GT3s that have done 3 stops, and a lot of them have only done 1 stop. So we've still got plenty of strategy. And what is this that is on our screen? That is Miller and Bice.
And Beast Miller and one of the Asotas as well, lapping them. And that all got a bit messy. That would be for position between Matt Bice and Steve Miller. the GT3 am, but the hypercar would not be appreciating that. I didn't see what happened there, but the GT3s have their right to run their line, and that's what they're going to do, but things got a bit scary.
Yeah, it looks like that was just a big case of miscommunication from everyone involved of, well, I'm going to go here. No, well, I wanted there. Okay, well, you go there, but I'm already here, so I don't know what to do. That was rough, and shout out to Stephen Miller, because I think Stephen Miller was the big loser in that mix, because you could see just how much he was wiggling about having a bad time. Here we go. Let's see if we can get a quick replay of what exactly
Stephen
was
runs
happening.
wide. No, we're not getting it. That's a different time. But it's hard in the GT3s because you run your line, but then the hypers also want your line. So sometimes you're between a bit of a rock and a hard place, and the GT3s should just stay on their line, as it looks like Matt Boyce just in front there was going for another position on Filippo Marazzi. As we panned away, he's all over the back of that BMW. He's going to want to be making his way through, because he's not going to know how much fuel Lepetri has to put in. Lepetri's quite far in front, and he's going to be desperate to get past Filippo Marazzi, as there he goes through No Name round the outside. It's not going to work there. You're then not going to go through because you're not going to have the good run, and he's going to have to wait even longer because he's not going to get him a poo on.
He almost had him there through Speaker's corner. I thought he had him around the outside, but just couldn't make the grip stick there. And as they go through Puhan, not able to make the pass here. And again, at this point, he's just trying to wear him down. He's trying to wear down Filippo Marazzi in the BMW and just continue to put pressure. So you can see just how slippery that car is as soon as you get it offline, but he's kind of in a good spot here, and the rain is picking up a little bit. They're side by side. There's a little bit of door banging there like it's NASCAR, but it's not. It's GT3s, and now we go through, and Matt Bice has to slip back in there for P34 as there's a hypercar working its way through. And I will say the rain is picking up, and the track is getting wetter in areas, so we're going to start seeing everyone slow down just a little bit more as more and more rain arrives through the last 20 minutes of this race.
Oh, a big moment there for Marazzi, and that should allow Matt Brees through. Yeah, it does. Through into the bus stop nice and easy, as behind there's Micah Locke lapping Stephen Miller, but he was side by side going into the braking. I wonder which one's going to come out in front. It is Micah going side by side into the braking zone, into the bus stop. Hypercar and GT3, not the smartest decision from the Hypercar, to be perfectly honest, because the GT3s can outbrake you.
Yeah, it's very weird to see the GT3s able to outbreak the hypercars, but the hypercars just have so much speed that it almost doesn't make a difference on a track like Spa, where power can be a big need here on the track. Up front, I've been kind of keeping my eye on the gap. Kirby 7.5 seconds back from Bradley Sellers and is continuing to just try to slowly close that gap. They have 55 seconds to Wouter de Bruin. So if they needed to, those two could afford another pit stop and a quick splash and dash.
Yeah, I think they do have to have a splash and dash, but they're not going to be worrying about that. The only thing they're going to be worrying about is each other. And Brad, can he maintain that gap? He lost 8 tenths on the last lap, and he's lost a further 5 tenths so far this lap by the looks of it. But it bounces. It's all the way back up to 7.5 again. Bounce down to 7, back up to 7.5.
Yeah, 20 minutes remaining now. That gap continues to ebb and flow, and the heartbreak news, John Ullin DQ'd. Not DNF'd, DQ'd. So John Ullin will immediately be relegated back to 50th place, and that is John Ullin's race more than over.
It's a bit of a strange one. I wonder what he did to be DQ. Did he have a spin and end up going backwards? That's the most common way of getting DQ'd, is going backwards.
Yeah, I don't know what he did, but that's one that I don't think we normally see drivers DQ, so we'll see if we can get some info from our lovely Mr. Parfit in the background and see if he can get a little bit of a hint of exactly what in the world happened to John Ullin as we watch here. Again, this is Matt Bice that is getting lapped around by hypercars, letting them through and just letting things go.
That is Michael Locke and Jerry Chen by the looks of it, who are battling for position, but are in Hypercar and Hypercar AM respectively. So they are and they aren't battling for position, as John Meyer pulls into the pits from the front of Hypercar AM, and that will allow Jerry to go back into the lead of Hypercar AM, back into his what was a commanding lead. It's now a bit of a smaller lead, with George Angelidis holding on a few seconds back. As I said at the beginning of the race, George Angelidis is just going to be doing his laps, playing his game, doing what he needs to do, and with 18 minutes to go, he is only a few seconds off the lead of Hypercar AM.
Yeah, and that would be a big moment for him. John Meyer into the pits there and going through in Hypercar AM, just trying to see what happens. We'll see where things go and how that Hypercar AM battle goes through. Does Jerry Chen need another pit stop? Have we checked
We're not
on that?
sure. It was with 28 minutes to go. So that's the one we're really not sure whether Jerry Chen needs a splash and dash or not.
Jerry Chen could pull up an upset, or George Angelidis in the next 18 minutes could pull out 8 seconds and find his way forward. It's going to be very, very close in the Hypercar AMs. In the Hypercars, it's also very close. You got to keep your eyes up there on Sellers and Kirby. And of course, if they need to pit and Wouter de Bruin doesn't need to pit, that battle, all of a sudden, the gap is just a rate of naught. It's not there. This is your recap in with just 18 minutes left to go here in the race today. It's Bradley Sellers, Dan Kirby, Wouter de Bruin, Oliver Newman, and Tom Lane. Timon Subic, Mike Bell, Sene Stoffmeal, Adrian Rice, and Michael Locke. Your top 10 as it stands. So, and then moving from there, it's Jerry Chen, Magnus Dahlgren, George Angelidis, Luke Mitchell, John Meyer, Brian Hall, Eric Monet, Luke Goodlife, Ernest Bernardo, and David Junt, who is still in the leader of the GT3s at the moment. And then from there, this is where things get mixed. That's all we're going to cover at the moment, because we've still got plenty of action on track, and we've got 16 and a half minutes left to go. And I'm still showing that Luke Mitchell is on a dry compound tire. I don't know if anyone else is seeing that.
I am seeing that as well, and I'm also seeing Jerry Chen flashing his lights at Michael Locke. He wants to be let past. Michael Locke, you are holding me up. I'm going to give you the international signal to hold me up even more. No, Micah is a pro driver with an amp flashing his lights, telling him to get out the way. I don't think that's going to really make Micah think, oh, I better not hold this guy up. I think it's going to make him think, I'm not letting an amp through.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it. And the thing is, Jerry Chen is the faster driver. So, but again, this is mixed class. There's a lot of different things that go to it. So, again, the international signal for holding me up more, and that's when you go back to your GT3 days. You go back to that blood oath that you took to hold up faster cars, and you stay in the way a little bit. I think it's a good decision. You go there, slide round. This is Newman who's getting attacked there by Lane, and you can see Lane
fourth place. Oliver Newman has been having a fantastic race, but Lane has been slowly closing in, and does he go over the inside? Not quite there. Tom Lane is going to be looking for his way past. He is sliding all over the place. It's a bit like when we were watching Timon Subic earlier on his horse made of jello. Now Tom Lane's on his jello horse, and he's all over the back of Oliver Newman. It looks like a question of when, not if, at the moment, doesn't it, Brad?
It really does, and I'm going to imagine that if it's going to happen, it's going to be very, very soon here for Tom Lane, because Newman's trying to go through. We do have the confirmation that Luke has been on slicks the entire race, and he says it is Mike Bell's fault.
Well, that is just incredible. I can't believe he has managed to do that. Newman and Tom Lane, that is close for a Rouge and Radion. Close as you like.
They thought about going side by side, and Tom Lane, I think, had the sense come about him at the end of the pit straight and said, I'll back out, and I'll just get you down Kimmel. And here we go. Slipstream is going to pull to the outside line. That's ideally where you want to be here, is you head down the corners, and you head down into Lacombe, and Tom Lane up into 4th place here. Oliver Newman in 5th, and this is going to be where things get very, very spicy here, because we are down to just a few minutes left in this 90-minute race. 14 minutes exactly is where we're at. So Tom Lane, 4th place, but look at the gaps. 31 seconds to Wouter de Bruin.
The rate that Tom Lane is pulling away from Oliver Newman, I wonder whether Lane has to stop again and Newman doesn't. It's going to be very interesting. What I did notice at the end of the Kemmel Straight is Tom Lane's car was porpoising like mad, whereas Oliver Newman has his setup a lot more stable and steady. It wasn't bouncing up and down. Tom Lane would be crying like Lewis Hamilton with a bad back if he was in the actual car at the moment.
Yeah, that's a interesting way of putting it. Yeah, I'll steal the in-ear bug phrase there, but yeah, the setup, it makes a difference. Who is that off in the kitty litter?
Jason Whitehead, we've just been told. He has not had the best time. He's behind everyone. It's not going well for Jason in the Acura. The car that was the pick of the race because of the rain, maybe he has a dry setup on that car. It's just not Jason's day. Oh no, Stephen Miller, my Ferrari compadre.
That's a interesting pit stop entry. Yeah, I wonder what's happened to him here.
Very strange pit stop. But
yeah, I don't know.
Perhaps he was just a bit worried about not making it into the pits. Maybe he was looking and checking. What he could have been doing is setting up his pit stop. R Factor 2 has a habit of changing. You set your pit stop ready. R Factor 2 goes, oh no, sir. I'm going to give you dry tyres and put you on full fuel. So he must have saw that at the last minute and been changing it. Meanwhile, Dan Kirby is still 9 seconds behind Bradley Sellers. Bradley Sellers is holding on nicely. He jumped 10 seconds in the pit stop and Dan can't close in. Whether he's on fresh tyres or not, he just can't close it. But I want to very quickly skip away to GT3 and Josh LePetri is in the lead with a 12.8 second gap, and I'm pretty sure he pitted a while ago. He has done 2 stops, which should be enough. And he has a 12-second lead over Matt Reese. I don't know what happened to Matt, but Josh, oh, that's a tight one with the hypercar.
Oh, that is rough. That was a rough one, but the hypercar does get through. Josh LePetri holding on to that lead there and just trying to go through and hang on.
Jerry Formica by the looks of that one. And George and John Mayer very close. That's George and Brian Hall bumping and barging as George is worried about John Mayer coming. He doesn't want Brian Hall in the way. Brian Hall says, I'm a pro, get out of my way. They're going side by side.
And George backs out of it. George plays the smart move and backs out, but now he's just put himself under so much pressure from John Mayer in the background, because this is the battle for P2 and Hypercar AM, and George Angelides is trying to just stick right there in the mix as we go through. We head down the Kemmel Straight. Hard in the braking zone, tons of cars, and George Angelides defends that beautifully, positioning that car right in the middle.
Fantastic racing there from George. It's a shame. He would have been going, Brian, you're not fighting for position. I've got to fight for P2. Many Greek expletives going on in his head, I imagine, or probably out loud as well, as he pushes Josh LePetri out wide, and George is not going to care one bit that he's just pushed Josh out wide in the lead of GT3 AM, because he wants to make sure that he stays in front of John Mayer.
Yeah, that's the important moment for him to stay in front if he can and go through. Because for George Angelides, if he plays this right, it is possible that he could win Hypercar AM, depending on what Chen has left to do here, and if Chen can get his way through to the end.
And it looks like they've got an interruption from one of the Peugeots. Through he goes. That interruption is over already. I'm not sure if that's Brad or Wouter. More likely to be Brad, isn't it?
I was gonna say I would think, but it is Wouter de Bruin that's gone through there, and so now that gap has closed again between Angelides and Mayer. They're through. I mean, this battle's going to go for the next 8 minutes and 53 seconds, and one of two things happens. George Angelidis holds it, John Mayer gets passed, or they both end up in a barrier somewhere, or one of them ends up in a barrier somewhere. This is going to be a very, very close battle for the next 8 minutes, 30 seconds, because again, it's starting to rain even harder. We see more rain coming in, which is making the track more wet, which is making things even trickier for these drivers as we go. 8.5 minutes left to go as they cross the line.
And with 8.5 minutes to go, I'm going to give a shout out already to David Junt. He has an 82-second lead in GT3. 82 seconds from JT Tammy, who has come from the back of the grid.
It makes you wonder what would have happened if JT Tammy had started up further, where JT Tammy would be in the mix right now, because that is a huge gap. YouTube chat, Stacy Scott's game. Can't believe there's only one Lambo in the entire field. You know, Stacy, I'm with you on that one. Can't believe there's only one Lambo. I figured there would have been more.
Yeah, in GT3, it's a nice car in GT3, so I am surprised there's not more. In Hypercar, it's a bit of a hit and miss. It's the best on tyres, but when the tyres go, boy do they go, and it becomes a monster to control, which is why Mike Bell and Dan Herlock switched to the Asota, as we see John Mayer running wide, trying to get up on George Angelidis. What kind of mind games do you think he might be playing, trying to make George Angelidis make a mistake here, Brad?
Whatever mind games he can, because he really wants to get past. You could see he is just doing everything in his power to try to find a way through. He's trying to throw him off his rhythm. The groove. Beware the groove. Every race car driver has a groove that they go through, and if you throw the groove off, you can very, very quickly create problems. And you can see now they're trying to get through lap traffic here and GT3s and trying to snake their way through. And now John Mayer will get his way through, but that's opened up the gap a little bit for George Angelidis, which is going to give George Angelidis a chance to try to run away a little bit if he can. But he's not really pulling a gap here, and 6.5 minutes left to go. They're neck and neck. This can go either way.
He's not, but it's given him nice safety through Blanchimont and down the straight towards the bus stop, so he's not going to have to be looking in his mirrors this time, which means he can concentrate on running exactly how he wants to run and try and build on this to get a gap. You can see the gap's going up rather than down, or it was for a while. George obviously braking quite early, playing it safe, and John Mayer going, I'm going to make up all the time I can on the brakes, and boy did he.
Yeah, he's doing really good in the braking zones to pull that back down, but then as they go out onto the pit straight, it is going to open back up again to about 0.8 of a second. Now they head through La Sauce and they go through, and again, that gap is closing, it's opening. So John Mayer very brave on the brakes, but George Angelidis is really getting the run through the exits. And now, here we go. This is to El Rouge, this is to Radion, and this is going to be down the Kimmel straight. Look at that. They have a GT3 in front that George Angelidis had to lift a little bit for. And that is
the leader. It's the leader, David Junt, in front. So George can't knock off the leader of GT3. So he had to back out, which will it give John a chance at the run?
Yeah, now they snake their way through past Ross Smith here. And what will be the plan for John Mayer? It is just, it's second verse, same as the first. Stay single file right behind and just try to catch George Angelidis on an error. 5 minutes left to go here in this 90 minutes of Spa-Francorchamps here with VWSC. And it has been an exciting one. Looking through it, Hypercars, Bradley Sellers, 13 seconds on Dan Kirby. Chen is ahead by 14 seconds on these two on your screen, Angelidis and Mayer. David Junt just behind with 84 seconds of a lead. And then, of course, Bice is ahead by 2 seconds on Lippertree. And who is that that's off in the background that was backwards? That's a Hypercar. And that was Graf, we believe. Let's see if we can see what happened here, Becky.
He's not had a fun race in this Cadillac today, and he just, just a bit of a twitch. Nothing he could do after that twitch. Caught it and fishtailed the other way, straight into the wall.
That looked painful. Thankfully, he's back going, but he has lost tons of time there in that Cadillac, and that is going to be just a matter of, you've got 4 more minutes, just bring it on around to the finish and let it go here. This battle with Angelidis and Mayer, we're going to jump back to, because this gap is just 0.2 of a second. and it is continuing to just push.
And we're coming around Blanchemont. We're going to be into the bus stop in just a second. The last lap, John Mayer made up about 3 tenths into the bus stop. He's only 1 tenth behind now. Is he going to make the move here? No. Plays it safe, and I think George, a brilliant defensive line there. Every time we've seen George, have you seen those lovely defensive lines? Gives John nowhere to go. No chance.
George genuinely knows how to make that Acura as wide as a Caterpillar dump truck. He does a very good job of making sure that he is defending and holding on. There's somebody in the wall there going through Les Force.
Was that Good Life in the wall?
I believe it was. I believe that was Good Life there in 5th place in Hypercar AMS that was off into the wall. But this battle is, I mean, it's so good. It was not Good Life, actually. Who was that?
We have got David Junt coming into the pits for a last-minute splash and dash, but he's got all the time in the world to do that, so I guess he might as well. I wonder if any of the hypercars are going to have to do that. Is that why Dan Kirby's dropped a further 5 seconds, 6 seconds off of Bradley Sellers to make sure that he hasn't got to do the last-minute splash?
It could be that Dan Kirby has just decided that he is okay with that P2. Bradley Sellers coming across the line. 2 minutes, 34 seconds to go. This will not be the white flag, I don't believe. And Bradley Sellers into the pits. So I think Dan Kirby, if he's trying to play pit strategy here and he's trying to fuel conserve, he might have just got himself the win on a silver spoon, because Bradley Sellers into the pits here, and you can see the gap closing very, very quickly, because Bradley Sellers will have to come in and splash and dash.
No, it's the endurance. The endurance pits. So it's a long pit stop for Brad Sellers, and Kirby's easily passed because it's such a long pit, because we're in the endurance today because of the 50 entries that we had. The normal GP couldn't hold it. We are on the final lap now.
Final lap is through, so let's see how this goes for Dan Kirby, as Dan Kirby has basically just played this beautifully and just needs to make it one more lap around. That is the way you play pit strategy. Dan Kirby making his way through. Bradley Sellers having to pit in and will come out 6.5 seconds behind, and I don't care how fast you are as a driver, you are not making up 6.5 seconds in 1:25. So as Dan Kirby runs down into Le Com, he can just make it one more lap, Dan Kirby. That's all you've got to do here.
So, as Brad confirms, life is not the Gran Turismo film, where he did make up 6.5 seconds on the final lap to qualify for the World Championships. Brad, I don't think quite has that talent of Jan Mardenborough. I think Dan Kirby has played this to absolute perfection, hasn't he? He played the masterclass, just backed off. Okay, Brad, I'll let you go. I'll push you hard enough that you're going to worry about me and make you use your engine, use your fuel, and then I'm just going to back off and I'm just going to cruise to the victory.
It's a very, very smart move up front from Dan Kirby. George Angelides in Hypercar AMS has gone into the pits, which is going to give Mayer P2 there in Hypercar AM. And again, David Junt 60 seconds out. He had 82 seconds. It's now down to 60, but plenty of time there in the LMGT3s. And as we watch Dan Kirby, it's a long lap around here, especially when it's raining. The time will tick off the board, and it will be Dan Kirby who will need to just make it to the end of this lap, and his race will be over, and he can tell us the strategy was a masterclass. We worried he was going to have to make another stop, that he stopped a little too late, but it doesn't look like that is the case as he goes through and he comes around. He's going to just have the final bus stop chicane to make his way through. And Daniel Kirby, as he comes around this final corner, will be your winner here at the 90 Minutes of Spa in the VWSC, and will bring it around and over the line by 6.7 seconds on Bradley Sellers, with Wouter de Bruin a further 30 seconds back.
You say 30 seconds as if it's a big gap, but don't forget, Wouter had a drive-through in this long endurance pit lane. So to only be that 30 seconds back, Wouter would have been right there. Brad and Wouter, newly in the Peugeot, would have been right there, both of them fighting for their win.
Yeah, that would have been... It's amazing to sit and look and think of what could have happened again, it's the fun of endurance racing for me. It's what could have happened for some of these drivers.
I feel like that with Josh Lepetri. He was 8.5 seconds in front of Matt Beast. I don't know how he got 8.5 seconds in front of Matt Beast. Matt Beast was in control. Then he's 2.5 seconds behind, and Matt Beast is coming across to win in GT3.
Yeah, that's a huge win there. David Junt and Matt Bice coming through GT3. Yeah, it should be Matt coming across first because of the way the field has circulated through and mixed up. So it is Matt coming around here going through. Again, Josh Lepetri 3.6 seconds back, who wanted to have that win. It wasn't in the cars today, but still, podium's not bad at all in that Ferrari. The Ferrari that we were told was the problem child of the race, but is going to come through and get his win here in LMGT3 AMS. And then David Junt not too far off from getting his win in LMGT3s.
Yeah, it can't be understated what a fantastic drive David Junt did. Sometimes it's one of those drives we haven't spoken about him just because he's been there, he's been so consistent, he's been so good, he's quietly pulled a gap, and he's done it, and by a mile.
And he pulled that in the Acura NSX, so you got to give it to him. A very, very good win from David Junt. He's, just very, very comfortable in that Acura. Domination, it can be said, in the GT3 class, winning by so much time, just so much time. I don't even know what the final gap was. It was over 60 seconds. And we'll get our results in a moment as we see some cars come together in the background. Daniel Kirby completed 38 laps around this track here at Spa-Francorchamps to be your overall winner. Bradley Sellers in P2. Wouter de Bruin found third place. Tom Lane fourth. Oliver Newman in fifth. A car that I thought was going to do better and ended up in P5. The rain did not have its way with him. Timon Subic in P6. Mike Bell, Adrian Rice, Sine Stoffmeal in P9. Jerry Chin wins the Hypercar AMS there in P10. Luke Mitchell in 11th place. Brian Hall in P12. John Mayer in P12 as well. P13, Eric Monet. P15, Michael Locke. Magnus Dahlgren in P16. George Angelides in P17. Luke Goodlife in 18th. Jaroslav Zakic in P19. And Adam Gray in 20th place. And 21st, it is Vinicius Goncalves. And 22nd, Ernest Bernardo. And 23rd, David Junt, completing 36 laps around this track, is your GT3 winner. JT Tammy in 24th. Johnny Gutierrez in 25th, James Walker in 26th, Kyle Vessa, Matthew Overton, Peter Meyer, and Ross Smith, the boss man, in 30th place there. 31st, Eugene Mazur in 32nd, and is Matthew Bice round in the Corvette C8 that will be your LMGT3 AM winner. Josh Lepetri in 33rd, Giles Lalonde in 34th, Stephen Bice in 35th, Filippo Marazzi in 36th, W. Mike Bice in 37th, Stephen Miller, Ryan Reyes, Norm Graff in 40th place in the V-Series Cadillac. 41st place was Carl Strohel, Joe Wilkes, Jason Whitehead, James Bowers, and then your DNFs, Scar Pope, Daniel Herlock, Wayne Galvin, Craig Pullen, Benjamin Porteous Heath, with John Uyen being disqualified from this race and automatically relegated to P50 here in the VWSC. Still don't know why, Becky.
No, it's not one you see very often, so I'll be quite curious to find out why. I'm sure it will come out at some point, but I don't know when. So who would be your driver of the day, Brad? I love drivers of the day.
I feel like the driver of the day, if it goes to anyone, it's got to go to David Junt or JT Tammy. It's got to go to one of those two GT3s just because of how much of a gap they overcame. It's kind of crazy what they were able to do in those cars to find P1 and P2.
So we're just going to be bringing in our winners in just a minute. Whilst we bring our winners in, YouTube chat, who's your driver of the day?
I like Becky asking drivers of the day. James, take notes. These are things we need to add to the broadcast. But let's go ahead and grab let's see who we can grab, who's available, who's ready to go. let's grab our Hypercar Pro, our overall winner, Dan Kirby. Dan, good evening. Happy race. How did the 90 minutes of a wet Belgium Spa Grand Prix treat you?
Pretty well in the end. It was so difficult. The conditions were so slippery the whole freaking race. Sheesh.
It was rough watching from the booth, I'm not going to lie. But I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm curious to see what the answer is. Did you fuel save to the end there to get the win on Bradley Sellers, or was that a little bit of luck? Was it planned? How did you decide to only two-stop?
It wasn't originally planned. It was kind of on the fly adjustment when I think like 35-40 minutes left in the race. Then yeah, I started fuel saving a lot, and I went one extra lap than him on the last stops, but then I screwed myself and ran out of fuel in the pit lane, so I was just rolling to my box. So I lost that, like, I don't know what that was, 10-12 seconds in the last stint, so that's why I was following him the whole time. And then yeah, I was thinking the whole time, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I know that car, and it can't do the last like 33 minutes or whatever it was. So I was extra fuel saving just in case I had to do another lap, and just banking on him having to stop again. Yeah.
It was really close from us up here in the booth watching. Kind of looking through, were you planning for rain? Were you hoping the rain would stay away? You said things were tough, but just how tough were they for you?
Yeah, I started checking the weather like a week ago, but it's so volatile here that it was constantly changing. But I wanted to make sure that I was prepared for a wet setup. I had to adjust the ride heights on the Asada because it was bottoming out on the rain tires. So yeah, I had to work a little bit on the rain setup, and even if it was dry, I was kind of just going to commit to the rain setup, and because the freaking weather here is changing like by the minute all the time. So I was lucky I'd put in that little bit of work to figure out a good rain setup.
Yeah, it very clearly paid off. And you know, this is your third win in 5 races. But as is tradition here, Dan Kirby, anybody you want to thank? Anybody you want to shout out? For 30 seconds, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'll shout out John Uyen, who was our chief steward for a long time and was a really good like backbone of creating this awesome community. And he just recently like stepped down from that role. So I just want to say thanks to him for all the work he's put in.
Awesome. And thank you, Dan. Congrats on the win. And we'll see you next week or next time at the 4 Hours of Le Mans. It's not next week. I hope it's not next week.
I think it's like a month and a half or something.
Yeah, it's a little ways out there.
It's the end of June.
Okay. Yeah. We have a little bit of a wait. So, but we'll see you next time. Okay, Dan?
Alrighty. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And next, let's pull in Jerry Chin here. Jerry Chin, hello, sir. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing good. That was intense weather.
Did you practice for rain? Were you prepped for rain?
I did practice rain because it was raining on the server all week long. I did about 5 laps when it was drenched on the server, so I had an idea of what I needed to do. But we didn't have a special rain setup, so I just put on the wets and disconnected all the roll bars and drove off. Hope for the best.
It very clearly worked for you, though. And Jerry, you know, Spa is a very unique track. Is this a track you enjoy, or is this a track that, you know, was a challenge? What was kind of your plan going into this race?
Yeah, no, I love Spa, and especially with the 963, all those mid and high speed corners, it suits it really well. So I knew it was gonna be fun. And then when it started raining, I was like, okay, this is actually good for me. Yeah.
we call rain the great equalizer for a reason.
Yeah, if it was dry, we're gonna do 4 stints, and so when I saw the rain, I put on the wets, and then after about 2 laps, and I saw the fuel mileage, I was like, okay, well, I think we can pull off this in only 2 stops. So I was just saving fuel right from the beginning, like a lot of lift and post into the braking zone, and just making sure I could hit that 30 minutes on that first stint.
Yeah,
and then I was trying to save the my front wets because I was just trying to avoid locking them up. But my second stop, I went and switched to new wets on just the front. So I had old wets on the back, new wets on the front, and those first 3 laps out of the pits were a bobsled, absolutely bobsledding into every corner. It was so scary.
It very clearly paid off for you, though, in a win in Hypercar AM. So, but as is tradition here, anyone you want to thank, anyone you want to shout out before we let you go?
Yeah, definitely my teammates John Mayer and Eric Monet. We did the 1, 2, 3, so we swept the podium, and big shout out to John because it was his setup. Eric and I didn't have a lot of time this week, so John worked on the setup, and his setup was absolutely nails. Dry, wet, didn't matter. The car was just locked in, so thanks to John.
Awesome, and thank you, Jerry. We will see you next time in Le Mans in just over a month.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, and then from there, let's go ahead and grab the GT3 winner, David Junt. And let's see what David has to say here about a win that on my sheet says was over 60 seconds. I don't know the final official gap, but I know it was over 60 seconds. A dominating win, David. How'd the Acura treat you today?
Hi. Yeah, it was the car felt good. I was thinking how it would probably get on against the Aston and its very good tire wear and pace. And then it started suddenly. The rain came into the picture, and I wasn't sure if the car would be still about as good in the handling. So it's just very, very, very small change, and the back end and everything was just balancing well. And in the qualifying, I just drove out, tried just make the dries work, and it was just good enough for 1 lap that was without aero. And in the race again, I'm also glad I was not too close to the hypercars because either some tire glitch or something, because some had real trouble with their cars and I had to dodge some of them. But I could settle into a nice rhythm, and everyone behind seemed to fall a bit away. And then I could see halfway of the race that JT had cleared most of them anyway already. But the car was handling so well, I could just drive so consistent times. I was a bit surprised. So it wasn't that easy, but it was very much a lot of fun to drive out there.
Yeah, did you have any big issues with traffic or anything with hypercars going around? Because I didn't seem to see anything on my side when we were watching. It didn't seem like you really had any struggles, whether it be car handling, traffic, anything at all. It just seemed like this was a dream race for you.
Yeah, I was sometimes a bit praying, but often, of course, I'm on the run, calculating with relative overlays, seeing how close they will get to a certain corner or straight, and then they can more easily clear me. Mostly it was at the start, so some people had real trouble to get going, maybe the cold tires and such, and most of them maybe never, both rain and wet weather tires. But mid-race, mostly it looked okay. Maybe someone I wasn't sure how maybe to let lap, and I got caught at once and had to move to the inside because lifting on the India line. But there's nothing too bad, I would say. It looked okay today.
Yeah, it looked good overall. And any final thoughts about this race?
I'm glad. Although there was no fight with JT, I was just gonna say I reflected on the last race. I chatted to him or I wrote to him, and we had I also had a look up on the rule setting, and I noticed that I probably misread something about the defending that at Imola that happened. So I apologize to JT, and I'm sorry it looked drove a bit out there, but I'm glad there was no big issues or I don't think I've really had a cutting penalty point out there, but most of the time I just kept it clean and made sure that I wouldn't spin. So I just had one slight wiggle over Rouge and Radillon and went that straight, but otherwise the car behaved nice, and I'm glad I could finish it like that.
Yeah, it was a really good run from you. And anyone you want to thank, anyone you want to shout out before we let you go?
I could directly say Becky that at the start of the season helped me give me a few tricks for the car so I could get into it a bit quicker and just put it nicely at the start, and it seems like it's working out so far. Gotta look a bit more, but yeah, thanks.
Awesome, and thank you, David. We'll see you next time at Le Mans.
Yep.
All right. And then let's grab Matt here, the GT3 AM winner in the Corvette, a car that everyone seems to love, and especially Matt seems to love. So how was Spa for you in the Corvette, my friend?
Oh, Spa treated me pretty well, and as usual, we got some rain, which, I was feeling pretty confident coming in. I do like the rain. I like a little bit more tail happy and can feather the throttle pretty well. Did manage to nearly shoot myself in the foot there on my first stop. Coming in, I think I ended up with a miscalculation, ended up with one slick on the front left. And I don't know if it was in my head or if I truly put it on there, but yeah, those guys behind me, they were gaining quick by the end of that stint.
Yeah, I see Josh LePetri saying, don't know if I made an error. I would have had enough tire to hold you back. So very clearly it was very, very close through. It looked from our perspective like a good win. So, but you're saying it was a bit more difficult than it appeared.
It was elbows. My legs were tired. It was everything we could do to keep those things pointed in the right direction. That's for sure.
Yeah, and kind of just looking at the different cars, I have to ask this. What made you pick the C8 Corvette?
We ran Lambros last year. We really liked them. They felt very stable through the S's. They just seemed very balanced. The only issue we had with them is they just felt heavy, and they felt slow off the get-go. So we switched over to Corvette because they had a similar balance to them, but felt a little bit lighter footed, and so far it's working out in our favor, definitely.
Awesome. And then of course, Matt, as is tradition here, anyone you want to thank, anyone you want to shout out before we let you go for the evening?
I gotta go with my brothers and teammates. I didn't have a whole lot of time for practice this week. They put in some good time in the wet and got me started on a wet setup, and it paid off for 2 out of the 3. So that's all we can hope for on any given day.
Yeah, good run there from the team and good run from you. And hey, it's a class win, so can't ask for much more, right?
That it is. I'll take it.
Awesome. Congrats, and we'll see you next time at Le Mans, okay?
Thank you, Mom. Bye.
All right. And Becky, what? I think Spa was a good race, don't you?
I think that was a fantastic race. I was hoping it was going to dry out just so that we get when are they going to go on to dries? Who's going to try and make it go long? Who's going to try and make it to their normal pit stop? Who's going to put in an extra stop? But we just didn't need it. There was enough action going on that it was fine being wet all race.
I was really hoping that, and then it didn't happen. And then part of me is glad it didn't happen because I feel like there would have been a lot more chaos. But it could have also been fun if we had gotten, the damp start to dry and then rain at the end of the race. But, it doesn't always happen. It should have happened, though. It would have been great.
And Luke Mitchell would have been laughing with his dry tyres through the whole race. And he said in YouTube chat, slicks was not the right tyre. No, it was not, Luke. No, it was not.
Luke, why did you do that? I need to know. Send me a PM. Let me know why you did that, because I genuinely don't understand it.
He blames Mike Bell, but Mike Bell gets blamed for a lot of things that aren't always his fault. And Mike might have been saying it as a joke, and Luke took it to heart.
See, if that's the case, that's kind of on him, don't you think? That's kind of one of those, why did you do that? But
why did he stay on them? That's my question.
I mean, he clearly made it work, so I'll give him that one. Becky, question for you.
Go on.
Next week in the VWSC Historics is the 2.4 hours of Le Mans. Will you be racing next week at the 2.4?
I'm really not sure. I'm gonna see how things go. I haven't run a single lap of it yet in practice, and I would have liked to have been practicing all week, but I haven't really been up to it. So I'm gonna wait and see. But it's maybe gonna be a no. Ben Borman isn't around for it, my teammate, but Yuki Takanashi, my other teammate, is now back and should be getting his rig together. He needs to fix his rig a bit. Should be getting that together next week, so he might convince me to do it. So we'll see. Might see me. You might have the displeasure of me joining you again. Who knows?
I wouldn't call it a displeasure. I was going to say, if you don't race, you're more than welcome in the booth. So we can boot James to the side again next week. He'd be okay with that, right, James? See, that's James saying yes in the background. You all can't hear it, but he said yes. But yes, be sure to tune in next week, the 4th of May. It's the 2.4-hour Le Mans, and then we're taking a break for about 4 weeks. And then VWSC Moderns will come back with the 4.8 hours of Le Mans on the 8th of June. And then from there, it is, of course, Glenn and a lot of other good racing coming at you. I'm not going to spoil everything. Be sure to join and check things out. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, regardless of which channel you're on, the CMS or the JP Broadcasting channel, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, do all the fun things that are free that help support the league and the channel and keep things going. But Becky, any final thoughts before I sign this thing off?
I think just how incredible a race David and JT had, and the great strategy call by Dan Kirby. It was there. The people were spread out, but there was still action. There was still thoughts. There's still things going on everywhere. Spa really does throw that up, and I think we were very lucky to have such a fantastic race. And everyone just enjoy next week, because we are going to historic Le Mans with that massively long straight with those 64 cars screaming down it at 200 miles an hour. Bumping around. They can barely go in a straight line at the best of times, let alone at 200 miles an hour. It's going to be one to watch.
It's going to be great. And of course, on behalf of Becky, my name is Brad, and we have taken you from the start to finish of this 90 Minutes of Spa. Be sure to tune in on the next one, where we'll take you from start to finish yet again. Good night.